In a time long ago, in a world where gods and mortals intertwined, there was a mortal woman whose beauty was so extraordinary that it captivated even the hearts of the divine. Her name was Psyche, a name that would echo across the centuries, entwined with love, sacrifice, and transformation. Hers is a story of a quiet soul tested by the forces of fate, love, and the gods themselves. From the first tender moments of her life, Psyche's journey would be one of trials, each more challenging than the last, yet all leading to her eventual rise among the immortal. Through her story, we witness the delicate balance between the human heart and the divine, the moments of doubt and despair, and the quiet strength that guides her through darkness toward the light. So, as the evening sky deepens and the stars quietly take their place, allow this story to wash over you. Let the journey of Psyche, a tale of love that endures, of soul and spirit elevated, guide you softly into rest. Like, subscribe, and tell me where you're listening from. And now, let the story begin. Psyche, a name that resonates like a soft whisper across the sands of time. Born into the royal family of a distant kingdom, her very existence was marked by beauty so extraordinary that it eclipsed even the radiant glow of the stars. The winds of fate stirred around her from the moment of her birth, for she was no mere mortal. Her beauty was divine, and all who gazed upon her were entranced, from the lowliest peasant to the greatest kings. The people revered her, building altars in her honor, whispering her name in reverence, and offering gifts to her as though she were a goddess. Her family, proud of their daughter's grace and allure, took little notice of the whispers that had begun to rise in the heavens themselves. It was not long before even Venus, the goddess of love, grew aware of the mortal beauty that threatened to rival her own. This, however, was not a tale of Psyche's beauty, was not simply admired, it was revered. In her father's palace, she glided through the halls like a vision brought to life. Her presence cast a soft glow, as though the very light of the heavens had kissed her skin. To gaze upon her was to glimpse the divine, and the people of her kingdom could scarcely believe she was mortal. Priests and oracles spoke of her as a living goddess, and so the offerings to her began. There were fragrant flowers, gilded statues, and sweet incense. Each day the temples filled with gifts, and the people worshipped her in awe, seeing in her face the reflection of Venus herself. But while the world praised her beauty, it also alienated her. Psyche, though grateful for the adoration, began to feel a quiet isolation, for her beauty set her apart. She was no longer simply a daughter of a king. She had become an object of worship. The people saw her as a distant ideal, not as a woman with thoughts and desires of her own. They did not speak to her, but instead to the image they had created of her. And with each passing day, her heart felt a pang of loneliness. In her palace, her family marveled at her, yet they too failed to see the sadness that began to take root in her soul. Her father, once proud of his daughter's beauty, now saw her as a figure to be admired from afar rather than a person to be loved. The more the people praised her, the less they truly saw her. She was a goddess in their eyes, but a stranger in her own life. As her beauty spread like ripples across the land, so too did the whispers of envy. While the mortals adored her, the goddess Venus, keeper of love and beauty, looked upon Psyche with growing resentment. For Venus, beauty was a realm she ruled alone, and Psyche's mortal allure threatened that dominion. The goddess's heart, once open and full of grace, began to turn cold as she watched the mortal woman gain more adoration than she herself had known. It was not mere jealousy. It was a deep and consuming envy that stirred in Venus's chest, for she feared that her power might one day be eclipsed by this young, beautiful mortal. In her anger, Venus devised a plan. It was a plan of subtle cruelty, designed not only to humble Psyche, but to destroy the very thing that had given her so much power, the admiration of others. Venus would not merely take away her beauty, she would make the world reject her, to strip her of the worship she had unknowingly earned. And so, with a heart full of malice, Venus summoned her son, Cupid, to carry out her will. Cupid, the god of love, was young and mischievous, his arrows capable of both causing the deepest joy and the most profound sorrow. Venus, in her fury, instructed him to shoot Psyche with one of his arrows, the golden tip designed to make her fall madly in love with the most vile, most repulsive creature on earth. This would be her punishment for daring to overshadow the goddess of love herself. But when Cupid first laid eyes upon Psyche, something unexpected happened. His heart, so accustomed to causing love, was suddenly filled with it. He saw her, not as a rival to his mother, but as a being worthy of love. Her beauty, though breathtaking, was not a threat to his power, but rather a reflection of the grace that could be found in all living things. In that moment, Cupid felt something he had never known: tenderness. Rather than strike her with his bow as his mother had commanded, he found himself looking at Psyche with an affection that surpassed even his divine power. Yet, as fate would have it, Cupid's love for Psyche could not remain a secret. His heart, a tender thing, struggled with the weight of his duty. Torn between love and loyalty, Cupid withdrew from Psyche's life, leaving her in a world that was both adored and lonely. Unbeknownst to Psyche, the very god who had been tasked with bringing her to ruin was falling in love with her, though he was too afraid to reveal himself. And so, Psyche's life continued in a strange balance. She was adored by all, yet deeply alone. She wandered through her palace, a lonely goddess of beauty, cursed by her own perfection. The people still came to worship her, yet their admiration was not for her true self. It was not her heart they sought, but her appearance. As each day passed, her inner world grew more distant from the adoring throngs outside. But what was this longing she felt? Was it the desire to be loved for who she truly was, not just for her beauty? And could anyone ever love her if the world only ever saw her through the lens of her appearance? These were the quiet questions that lingered in her heart, unanswered and unresolved. In time, the whispers of the oracle reached her father. He was told that his daughter could not remain alone forever, that she must marry, for she was the jewel of the land, and it was time for her to be claimed. And so, a marriage was arranged, a union designed to fulfill the expectations of the kingdom, and yet, deep within her, Psyche felt only unease. Her beauty, which had once been her pride, was now the source of her greatest sorrow. For though she had everything a mortal could wish for, she had never known true love. Could such a thing be found, or was she destined to remain the object of admiration, unseen and unfulfilled? As the world around her moved forward, she stood at the edge of a new chapter. The promise of a husband, the hope for a life beyond loneliness, awaited her. But with it came the fear that her beauty would once again overshadow the truth of who she was. As Psyche's beauty continued to grow in fame, so too did the envy in Venus's heart. The goddess of love, once revered as the most beautiful of all, could not bear to see a mortal woman usurp her place in the hearts of both gods and mortals. Psyche, though unaware of Venus's wrath, had become the living embodiment of the goddess's power. Her beauty, a reflection of the ideal Venus wished to preserve. Venus's jealousy grew with each passing day. She watched as mortals filled her temples with offerings, not for her, but for Psyche. The priests of Venus, who had once performed their sacred duties in her name, now found themselves bowing before Psyche's radiant presence. They spoke of her as though she were a goddess herself, showering her with adoration that once belonged solely to Venus. In the quiet corners of her temples, Venus's anger festered and her heart became hardened. In the shadows, Cupid, the son of Venus, watched silently as his mother's fury grew. He too had seen Psyche's beauty, and unlike the others, he had felt something stir within him, something beyond admiration. But Venus, his mother, had given him a task. He was to punish Psyche for her pride, to make her fall in love with the most repulsive creature imaginable. Yet Cupid's heart, softened by Psyche's innocent beauty, refused to follow his mother's command. Still, Venus's wrath was unyielding. She called upon her son, Cupid, to do her bidding and punish the mortal who dared to challenge her reign. But when Cupid, torn between loyalty to his mother and his newfound love for Psyche, failed to carry out the task, Venus took matters into her own hands. The goddess of love, in her frustration, decided to take direct action herself. One evening, as Psyche wandered through the quiet halls of her palace, she felt an unfamiliar stir of unease. It was as if the air had shifted, the weight of something ancient and unforgiving settling upon her. A voice echoed in her thoughts, a voice she could not quite place, yet felt deep within her bones. Your beauty is a threat to the very balance of love. You have been adored, but now you must be humbled. Psyche, puzzled and alarmed, looked around her grand chamber, but no one was there. The sense of foreboding lingered, and with it a deep sense of dread. It was the moment when she realized that someone was watching her, and that the gods had noticed her in ways she had never anticipated. The next day, her father, the king, received a troubling message from the oracle of Delphi. The gods had spoken, and the oracle's words were clear. It was prophesied that Psyche, despite her beauty, was not destined for the life of happiness she had envisioned. She would be abandoned by her suitors, cast aside by the very people who had once worshipped her. And so, with heavy hearts, her family decided that she must marry, and her fate would be decided by the gods themselves. The oracle had advised that Psyche be placed upon a high mountain, alone, where she would be taken by the winds to meet her divine husband, someone chosen not by her, but by fate. With this decision, her family, though they loved her dearly, prepared to send their daughter away, believing it was the only way to restore balance to their world. As the days passed and preparations were made, Psyche's heart sank. She could not shake the feeling that her beauty, the very thing that had brought her so much admiration, was now the cause of her downfall. She had become a pawn in the hands of the gods, a living symbol of love's destructive power. Her heart was heavy with the weight of uncertainty. She was to be married, but to whom? And what would become of her? On the day she was to be taken to the mountain, her family gathered around her, offering their final words of comfort. But no words could soothe the storm brewing inside Psyche's heart. She had been worshipped, adored, and loved, but never truly seen for who she was. She was a goddess to the people, but she felt like a stranger to herself. The moment arrived. Psyche, in her royal garments, was led to the top of the mountain, where the winds howled and the sky seemed to open wide. Her family, their hearts torn, watched from a distance, powerless to stop the events set in motion. With a soft whisper of the wind, Psyche was lifted from the earth, carried away on the breeze. The weight of her fate, of her beauty, and of the gods' designs hung heavily upon her as she ascended. She was not alone. Somewhere in the vast expanse of the heavens, something stirred, a presence that watched her as she floated through the air, though she could not see it. Her heart raced with both fear and wonder. What awaited her at the end of this strange journey? What kind of man would marry her, a woman so beloved by all? And would he see her for who she truly was? Or would he, like the others, worship only the image she projected? At last, Psyche was carried to a quiet, secluded palace, one more magnificent than any she had ever seen. Its marble walls gleamed in the soft light, and golden doors opened before her, inviting her in. Her feet touched the ground, and the wind that had carried her away gently faded into the air, leaving her alone in the palace. She stepped inside, her heart both heavy and full of expectation. She had been promised a husband, a life of security and devotion. But as the doors closed behind her, a deep silence descended. She was alone in the vast ethereal space. And though she had been chosen by the gods, she felt no joy in her fate, only the uncertainty of what lay ahead. As Psyche stepped into the palace, the doors of the grand hall closed gently behind her, sealing her within its cool golden walls. The air was still and soft, filled with the faint scent of blooming flowers that seemed to emanate from nowhere, as though the very stones of the palace had been carved from the petals of the gods' gardens. Psyche looked around, her heart beating faster with a mixture of awe and confusion. The palace, though magnificent, felt unfamiliar, as though it belonged to a world far beyond her own. At first, there was no sound except the gentle rustle of her footsteps upon the marble floor. Then, from the quiet recesses of the palace, a soft voice echoed, tender and soothing. "You are welcome here," it said. "Rest, for this is your home now." Psyche looked around, searching for the source of the voice, but there was no one in sight. Her mind raced with thoughts of what would come next. Was this her husband, the one she was destined to marry? But the voice gave no clue to its origin. It simply filled the room with a sense of peace, as if it were guiding her to a place of safety, away from the uncertainty that had filled her heart moments before. "Do not fear," the voice continued. "You are loved, though you cannot yet know it." A shiver ran down Psyche's spine. She longed to know who spoke these words, but there was no one to be seen. With a hesitant step, she wandered deeper into the palace. Her eyes fell upon the magnificent furnishings, the rich tapestries, the delicate sculptures, the soft, inviting couches. Everything in this palace seemed designed to soothe her weary soul, yet she felt a strange emptiness inside. The palace, despite its beauty, felt both familiar and foreign, like a dream she could not quite grasp. She made her way to a grand chamber, where soft light filtered in through large windows, casting gentle patterns across the floor. The room was perfectly arranged, with a large bed draped in fine linens at its center. It was a room made for a queen, both regal and serene. And yet it left her with a sense of quiet unease. For some time, Psyche wandered through the palace, her mind full of questions, none of which seemed to have answers. She wanted to understand what had happened to her, why she was here, and who her husband truly was. But each step she took in the palace only deepened her sense of uncertainty. The voice she had heard earlier was no longer present, and silence had once again settled over the vast halls. As the day turned to night, Psyche found herself drawn to the bed in the grand chamber. Her body, tired from the journey, begged for rest. Reluctantly, she lay down, her thoughts still swirling with doubt and longing. She longed to see her husband, to know his face and understand his heart. But for now, all she had were her thoughts and the silence of the palace. As she drifted into a light sleep, the soft sound of footsteps filled the air. Slowly, as if guided by some unseen hand, the sheets rustled. Psyche opened her eyes, startled by the presence she felt beside her. And then she saw him. He was tall, his form strong and graceful, and though his features were shrouded in shadow, there was a sense of radiance about him. It was as though his very presence brought warmth into the room, even though the light was dim. She could not see his face clearly, but his eyes, when they met hers, were filled with an emotion she could not yet name. There was tenderness, yes, but also something deeper, something unspoken. "You are safe here," he whispered softly, his voice the same as the one that had spoken earlier. But now, in the quiet darkness, his words seemed to carry more weight. They felt like a promise. Psyche's heart raced, but she did not speak. She did not know what to say. The figure beside her was both familiar and unknown, like a dream she had never dreamed. He felt so close and yet so far away. In that moment, the tension between them hung in the air like a delicate thread. Psyche could not deny the pull she felt toward him, yet she could not bring herself to reach out. She felt an inexplicable sense of connection, but also a deep uncertainty. Who was he? Why had he brought her here? And why must he remain in the shadows? "I am your husband," the voice whispered, as though reading her mind. "But you must never see my face." The words were gentle but firm, and they carried a weight that Psyche could not ignore. Her heart ached with the longing to see him, to know the man who had chosen her as his bride. But the promise in his voice, one that both soothed and troubled her, was clear. Psyche, her heart torn between curiosity and fear, nodded silently. She had been told not to question, not to seek answers. But even as she closed her eyes, surrendering herself to the mystery of the moment, a part of her wondered, who was this man who held her so tenderly in the darkness? And why did he insist on hiding his face from her? With those thoughts lingering in her mind, Psyche drifted back into sleep, her dreams filled with shadows and whispers. The palace, her strange and beautiful new home, was both a sanctuary and a prison. And the man beside her, her husband, the one who had brought her here, was both a stranger and a love she could not yet comprehend. The days passed quietly in the palace, and Psyche, though unsure of her circumstances, gradually became accustomed to the life she now led. Her days were filled with luxury, with soft linens and fragrant gardens, yet her heart remained heavy with longing. Though the palace was beautiful beyond measure, there was a profound loneliness that haunted her. She had not yet seen the face of her husband, nor had she spoken to him in any real way. Every night, as the soft, soothing voice of her husband filled the air, she felt both comforted and pained. He spoke with tenderness, promising her safety and peace, but his absence, the mystery of his identity, grew ever more insistent in her mind. The rules were clear. She must never look upon his face. He would come to her only in the dark of night, and when the morning light crept into the room, he would be gone. In these fleeting moments, Psyche wondered if she was truly living or merely existing in a dream. She longed to know her husband, to understand the man who had taken her from her family and brought her into this magnificent palace. But every time she reached for answers, she was reminded of the unspoken command that held her bound, never to see his face. At first, Psyche accepted this strange arrangement with the naivety of youth, for she believed her husband's promises of love and safety. Yet, over time, the silence of the palace began to suffocate her. She began to question whether the love she was experiencing was true or merely the result of a divine command that could not be defied. With each passing night, she felt more like a prisoner, though the palace walls, so rich in beauty, did not show it. But there was something stirring in her heart, something beyond the palace walls, beyond the promise of safety. It was a yearning, a need to know. The world outside the palace had been left behind, but Psyche's heart was still tethered to it. She longed for the reassurance that her life would not be forever locked away in this palace, forever shrouded in mystery. One evening, as she gazed out the window, watching the stars begin to twinkle in the night sky, a thought began to take root in her mind. It was a question that had lingered in the back of her thoughts for some time, but now it bloomed fully in her heart. Why must I remain in darkness? Why must she continue to live in the shadow of the man she loved without ever truly knowing him? What was it that made him refuse to reveal himself to her? Was it fear, or something more? Her curiosity began to gnaw at her. It was as though a deep, unspoken need to understand the truth had awakened inside her. And yet, despite her feelings, she hesitated. The love she had for her husband, though veiled in mystery, was real. She felt it in the warmth of his touch and the tenderness of his words. And so, she found herself torn between the sacred vow she had made to him and her growing desire to truly know him, to understand the man who had chosen her, to see the face that had been kept from her so long. One night, as she lay in bed, waiting for the familiar sound of his voice, something shifted within her. A resolve hardened in her heart, and she made a decision. She would look upon his face, once, just once, and see the man who had promised her love. For how could she continue to live with such uncertainty? How could she place her trust fully in someone whom she did not even know? When her husband arrived that night, as always, he whispered soft words of reassurance, his voice warm and soothing. But Psyche, her heart pounding in her chest, knew what she had to do. As he lay beside her in the darkness, she gently reached out, her fingers trembling as they brushed the edges of his skin. She was careful, cautious, but the pull of her curiosity was too great. With a trembling breath, she lifted the veil that shrouded his face, the moment she had both feared and longed for. But what she saw, when his face was revealed, was not the man she had imagined. Instead, a figure of glowing radiance met her eyes. Cupid, the god of love, whose beauty was beyond mortal comprehension. His golden hair shone with a light that seemed to come from within, and his eyes glowed with the warmth of the sun itself. He was not the mortal man she had believed him to be, but a god, one who had chosen her despite the rules of both gods and mortals. Psyche gasped, her heart filled with both awe and fear. Cupid was no mere man. He was a god, and the love they shared was not bound by the rules of the mortal realm. But in that moment, she realized that she had broken the sacred vow she had made to him. She had gazed upon his face, defying the very command he had given her. Cupid's expression shifted, and for the first time, Psyche saw sorrow in his eyes. He rose from the bed, and with a single sorrowful glance, he left her side. The air grew heavy with regret, and the warmth that had once enveloped her heart faded into the cold emptiness of her mistake. She had seen him, and in doing so, had broken the trust between them. "I am sorry," Cupid's voice whispered, though he was no longer in the room. "You have broken the bond between us." Psyche's heart broke at the sound of his words. She had betrayed the very love she had sought to preserve, and though she had uncovered the truth, it was now a truth that would drive a wedge between them. The air in the palace grew cold, and with it a deep sorrow settled into Psyche's heart. The warmth that had once filled the halls of the magnificent palace was now replaced by a thick, heavy silence. Cupid had vanished. In the moment that she had gazed upon his face, the bond they shared had been broken, and with it, the gentle peace that had once surrounded her. Psyche remained alone in her grand chamber, her heart torn between the love she still felt for Cupid and the regret that consumed her every thought. She had been warned not to look upon his face, yet her curiosity had driven her to disobey. Now, the consequences of her actions unfolded before her like a dark storm. She could not undo what had been done. Cupid was gone, and she was left to confront the emptiness of the palace, a symbol of her mistake. Though she was surrounded by riches, beauty, and luxury, Psyche felt as though she were imprisoned in her own heart. The very walls of the palace, once a sanctuary, now seemed like the walls of a prison. The golden columns that had once shimmered with light now stood as cold, silent sentinels, bearing witness to her loneliness. The gardens, so fragrant with blooms, now seemed desolate and still. The birds that once sang in the trees now sat in silence, as though they too mourned the loss of the love she had so carelessly let slip away. As the days passed, the memory of Cupid's touch lingered in her mind, haunting her. The warmth of his embrace, the gentleness of his voice. It was all so real, so vivid. But now it seemed as though it had been a dream that had shattered upon the waking of her gaze. She could not escape the consequences of her actions, no matter how hard she tried. In her grief, Psyche wandered the palace, her footsteps echoing through the empty halls. She could not bear the thought of remaining within these walls, but she also could not imagine leaving. The palace had become both her sanctuary and her prison, a place where she had once known love, but now knew only the bitter taste of regret. It was then that the voice, once so familiar and comforting, returned to her. It was faint at first, barely a whisper, but it was enough to catch her attention. "You have broken the bond between us," it said softly, "but you must now find your way back." Psyche's heart skipped a beat as she heard the words. She knew the voice. It was Cupid's. But this time it carried a note of sadness, a tone she had never heard before. There was no warmth, no tenderness in it, only the echo of disappointment. She had broken the trust they had shared, and now she must face the consequences. "I have failed you," she whispered to the empty air. "I have broken the bond, and now you are gone." But the voice did not respond, leaving Psyche in the silence of her thoughts once more. She could not remain in this isolation any longer. She could not stay in a place that had once been filled with love, but now only echoed with the sound of her own mistakes. And so, with a heavy heart, Psyche made the decision to leave. She would search for Cupid no matter where he had gone, no matter what trials lay ahead. She would seek his forgiveness, if such a thing were even possible. But the path ahead was uncertain, and she had no idea where to begin. Her first steps were hesitant, for she knew that the gods who had once welcomed her into their divine realm would not look kindly upon her disobedience. She had defied the very commands of a god, and she had no guarantee that they would allow her to return. But what other choice did she have? She had no place left in the palace without Cupid by her side. As she walked through the gardens, the once vibrant flowers now wilted in her presence, and the trees seemed to bow their heads in sorrow. The path ahead was long and uncertain, but Psyche knew that she had to begin. She could not stay in the place where she had made her mistake. She took one final look at the palace, the golden walls that had once promised her safety and love. Now they stood as a reminder of her fall from grace. Her heart heavy with sorrow, Psyche turned away, stepping into the unknown. She did not know where her journey would lead, but she knew that she could not remain where she had lost her love. Psyche's heart ached as she left the palace behind, the golden walls fading into the distance as she walked into the unknown. With each step, she could feel the weight of her decision pressing down on her, yet her resolve only grew stronger. She could not stay in the place where she had lost everything: her love, her joy, and her trust. Everything had been shattered in that one fateful moment when she had broken the promise she had made to Cupid. The path before her was long and uncertain. There was no map to guide her, no clear direction to follow. The world outside the palace was vast and filled with dangers she had never before known. But Psyche, though frightened and uncertain, was determined to find her husband, to beg for his forgiveness, and to restore the love that had once flourished between them. Her first steps took her through the wilderness. The dense forest around her seemed both beautiful and menacing, the trees stretching high into the sky, their branches intertwining to form a canopy that blocked out the sunlight. The path was narrow and winding, and with each turn, Psyche wondered if she was making the right decision. Would she find Cupid again? Could she restore what had been broken between them? The further she ventured from the palace, the more the world seemed to close in around her. The air grew thick with the scent of damp earth and moss, and the sounds of distant birds and rustling leaves were her only companions. It was as if the world itself was watching her, waiting to see if she would succeed or fail. Days turned into weeks, and Psyche's journey became one of endurance. She wandered from village to village, seeking word of Cupid, but all she found were rumors and empty promises. Some told her that Cupid had vanished into the heavens, never to return to the mortal world. Others spoke of his wrath, claiming that he would never forgive her for breaking the sacred bond they had shared. Still, Psyche pressed on, for her heart told her that her husband's love was not lost forever. One day, in a quiet town near the foot of a great mountain, Psyche encountered a wise old woman who seemed to know much about the gods. The woman, though weathered by age, had eyes that sparkled with the wisdom of centuries. She listened to Psyche's story with a quiet understanding, and when Psyche finished, the woman spoke. "The gods are merciful, but they are also bound by their own laws," she said. "Cupid, though he loves you, cannot return to you without first knowing your devotion. You must prove your love and your resolve, for only then will you be worthy of his forgiveness." Psyche's heart sank at the woman's words. "How can I prove my devotion when I have already made such a terrible mistake?" The old woman smiled softly, her eyes gleaming with knowing. "The gods do not seek perfection, child. They seek sincerity, humility, and the courage to change. Cupid will not turn his back on you forever, but you must first show him that you are willing to do what it takes to earn his love again. There are tasks, difficult, yes, but they will test the strength of your heart and the depth of your love." Psyche, though weary and unsure, felt a spark of hope ignite within her. Perhaps this was the path she had been seeking. Perhaps the tasks the old woman spoke of were the key to restoring her love with Cupid. The old woman, seeing the determination in Psyche's eyes, gave her a cryptic piece of advice. "Go to the realm of the gods, where Venus reigns, and ask for her help. It is there that you will find the trials that await you. But be warned, child, the gods do not forget, and their favors come at a cost." With that, the old woman disappeared as mysteriously as she had appeared, leaving Psyche standing in the quiet town with nothing but the weight of her decision and the faint whisper of hope in her heart. She knew that the road ahead would not be easy, but she was ready. She had already lost so much: her husband, her trust, her peace, and now she would do whatever it took to restore what had been taken from her. Psyche set her sights on the towering mountain in the distance, where the gods were said to dwell. The journey to the realm of Venus was fraught with dangers, but she was no longer afraid. She had come to understand that love was not simply a gift to be received, but something that had to be earned, nurtured, and protected. She had failed her love once, but she would not fail again. The path to the realm of the gods was treacherous, and the climb up the mountain was steep. The air grew thinner, and the wind howled with the fury of the heavens. But Psyche pressed on, her determination unshaken. Each step was a testament to her resolve. She had no idea what awaited her at the top of the mountain, but she knew that she had to face it. At last, after what seemed like an eternity of climbing, Psyche reached the summit of the mountain. There, before her, stood a great palace, a palace of shining marble and gold, its gates guarded by fierce creatures that seemed to belong to another world entirely. Psyche took a deep breath and stepped forward, her heart pounding in her chest. She had reached the realm of the gods. Psyche stood before the gates of the great palace, her heart heavy with anticipation. The towering gilded doors loomed before her, guarded by fierce creatures that bore the unmistakable marks of the divine. As she took a deep breath, the weight of the journey, of the trials yet to come, pressed upon her. She had come this far. There was no turning back now. With a steady hand, she pushed open the gates. The palace beyond was magnificent, shining with a light that seemed to come from within. Golden columns stretched to the heavens, and the air was thick with the scent of incense and flowers. Psyche stepped forward, her steps hesitant but determined, and made her way into the inner sanctum of the realm of Venus. At the heart of the palace, seated upon a throne of shimmering gold, was Venus herself, the goddess of love and beauty. Her presence was both majestic and intimidating, a power that could not be denied. Venus gazed down at Psyche with eyes that glimmered with a mixture of curiosity and disdain. The goddess was beautiful beyond mortal comprehension, her golden hair flowing like a river of light, and her form was draped in silken robes that caught the light in such a way that it seemed as though she glowed from within. "You have come to seek my help," Venus said, her voice soft, yet carrying the weight of an ancient power. "But tell me, mortal, why should I help one who has dared to defy my son, Cupid?" Psyche, though shaken by the goddess's presence, lifted her chin in determination. She had come this far, and she would not falter now. "I have come to ask for forgiveness and to prove my love for Cupid. I have made a mistake, and I seek to restore what I have lost." Venus's eyes narrowed, and for a moment there was a silence between them. Then, with a sharp laugh, Venus rose from her throne and stepped toward Psyche. "You wish to restore what you have lost? Very well, mortal. But know this: love is not given freely, and forgiveness is not easily earned. If you truly wish to win my son's heart, you must prove yourself worthy. I will give you a task, one that will test the depths of your resolve." Psyche's heart fluttered with both fear and hope. "What is the task, goddess?" Venus raised one slender finger, and with it summoned a great heap of grains, wheat, barley, oats, and all manner of seeds, into the air. The grains spilled onto the floor, creating a vast, seemingly endless mound of tiny particles that covered the ground in every direction. "This," Venus said, her voice carrying a hint of amusement, "is your first task. You must sort these grains, separate each kind of seed from the others. You must do this before the sun sets, or you will fail." Psyche's eyes widened in shock as she gazed at the immense pile of grains. It seemed impossible. How could she, a single mortal, ever hope to separate such a vast and tangled mass of seeds in such a short time? She felt a wave of despair wash over her as the enormity of the task set in. But then she remembered her purpose, her love for Cupid, and her determination to restore what she had lost. She would not give up, no matter how impossible the task seemed. As she knelt down to begin, a sudden movement caught her eye. From the edges of the palace, a group of tiny ants appeared, drawn to the grains. At first, Psyche thought them to be a mere part of the environment, but then she realized that they were gathering around the grains, their tiny legs scurrying quickly as they worked together with remarkable precision. The ants, seemingly aware of her plight, began to separate the grains on their own. They carried the wheat into one pile, the barley into another, and the oats into yet another. In moments, the vast mound of seeds was being sorted with an efficiency that Psyche could never have hoped to achieve alone. Amazed, Psyche watched as the ants worked tirelessly, their tiny bodies moving in harmony, each knowing its role. In no time at all, the task was nearly complete. Only a few grains remained scattered, and the ants worked together to collect them. What had seemed impossible was now nearly done, all thanks to the little creatures who had come to her aid. When the last grain was placed in its proper pile, Psyche stood, her heart pounding with gratitude. She had succeeded. She had completed the task that Venus had set before her. As the sun began to set on the horizon, Venus looked upon Psyche with a mixture of surprise and admiration. "You have done it," the goddess said, her voice softening ever so slightly. "You have completed the first task, but there are more to come, and they will not be so easily achieved." Psyche nodded, her heart swelling with both relief and determination. She had faced her first trial and she had triumphed. But she knew that the path ahead would not be easy. There would be more challenges, more obstacles, and more tests of her love and devotion. But she was ready. She had come this far, and she would not falter now. After completing the first trial set by Venus, Psyche felt a renewed sense of determination. She knew that the goddess's tests were not yet complete, and that each task would push her further into the unknown. Yet, even with the weight of uncertainty pressing upon her, Psyche's heart remained steadfast. She would endure whatever was required to restore her love with Cupid. Venus, observing Psyche's resilience, now assigned her a second task. This one was far more perilous. "Beyond the mountains," Venus said, "there lies a flock of sheep with golden wool. Their fleece shines like the sun, and the wool is guarded by fierce watchmen. You must gather some of this fleece for me, or your love shall remain out of reach." Psyche's heart quivered as she listened. The task seemed impossible. She knew the dangers that awaited her: sharp cliffs, wild beasts, and the vigilant guardians of the golden flock. Yet she remembered the first task, where what had seemed insurmountable had been accomplished with patience and cleverness. Perhaps this trial, too, could be overcome. She journeyed toward the mountains, each step heavy but purposeful. The path grew steep and narrow, lined with jagged rocks that tore at her shoes and scratched at her skin. The wind howled across the cliffs, carrying with it the cries of distant creatures. The sun beat down upon her, and yet Psyche pressed on, guided by the hope that each step brought her closer to the golden fleece and closer to Cupid. At last, she reached the pastures where the golden sheep grazed. Their coats shimmered in the sunlight, each strand of fleece glowing as if spun from sunlight itself. The flock moved together like a single organism, their golden wool sparkling with a divine radiance. But Psyche immediately noticed the danger. The watchman, large and imposing, patrolled the area with sharp eyes and stern expressions, armed to prevent any mortal from touching the sacred sheep. For a long moment, Psyche stood at the edge of the pasture, uncertain how to proceed. The golden fleece was beautiful, yet it was forbidden to touch the animals directly. She knew that attempting to take the wool would invite danger. Her heart raced with fear, but she remembered the lesson from her first task. Sometimes the clever and patient mind could triumph where brute force failed. As she observed the flock, Psyche noticed that the sun-warmed branches and thorny bushes surrounding the pasture had caught stray strands of the golden wool. The sun and wind had brushed the fleece from the sheep, leaving it tangled among the plants. Slowly, quietly, Psyche began to gather the wool that had been shed naturally, avoiding the watchman and leaving the animals unharmed. Her hands worked steadily, collecting the glowing strands, careful not to make any noise that would alert the guardians. The fleece was surprisingly soft, warmer than she had imagined, and it seemed to hum faintly with a subtle energy, as though recognizing her careful and respectful approach. Psyche worked through the day, placing the golden strands into a small bag she carried. By evening, she had collected enough to fulfill Venus's command. As Psyche turned to leave, she realized that her patience and ingenuity had saved her from great danger. She had not challenged the watchman, nor had she endangered the sheep. She had found the solution by observing, waiting, and acting with care. The lesson was clear. Love, like these trials, required wisdom, not force, patience, not recklessness. When Psyche returned to Venus, the goddess regarded her with a look that was both stern and approving. "You have succeeded again," Venus said, her tone laced with faint surprise. "You gather the golden fleece without harm, as the clever and gentle-hearted do. But remember, the next tasks will demand more than intelligence. They will demand strength of heart and courage of spirit." Psyche bowed, her hands still clutching the bag of golden fleece. She felt the weight of the goddess's words in her chest. She had survived the flock of golden sheep, yet the trials were far from over. With each challenge, her resolve strengthened, and though fatigue weighed upon her, she knew she must continue. Cupid's love, fragile and divine, awaited her at the end of these tests, and she would not falter. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden glow across the mountains, Psyche began her journey back to the palace. The weight of the bag reminded her of the path she had traveled and the lessons she had learned, that cleverness, patience, and a gentle heart could triumph even in the presence of divine obstacles. The memory of the glowing fleece in her hands brought a quiet comfort, a sign that the path of trials, though perilous, could indeed be navigated by a mortal with determination and love. After successfully completing 2 of Venus's tasks, Psyche felt the weight of her determination grow heavier, for the 3rd task lay ahead. Each trial she faced had tested not only her strength, but her heart. Venus, though seemingly cruel, had shown that love, true love, was not to be taken lightly. It required sacrifice, courage, and, most of all, the ability to endure through hardship. The task that Venus now set before Psyche seemed almost beyond comprehension. The goddess spoke in her cool, distant voice. "Your next task is to journey to the underworld. There, you must obtain a box of beauty from Persephone, the queen of the dead. This box holds the finest of all gifts, but you must return it to me unopened. Only then will you have completed your trials." The words struck Psyche like a bolt of lightning. The underworld? Persephone? The dead? She could scarcely imagine the journey ahead. To venture into the land of the dead was to face the unknown, and the dangers that lay there were as countless as the shadows that filled it. But Psyche had no choice. She had already come so far, and to turn back now would mean losing everything she had fought for. "Go," Venus commanded, her tone unyielding. "Go and bring me the box. But remember, do not open it, no matter what you encounter." With that, Psyche found herself standing at the foot of the great mountain where the entrance to the underworld was said to lie. The air grew colder as she approached the dark, yawning chasm that marked the gateway to the land of the dead. Shadows stretched out before her, reaching like hands, and a chill ran through her as the atmosphere shifted, turning dense and oppressive. Psyche hesitated, her heart pounding. The underworld was not a place for the living, yet she could not turn back now. She had been entrusted with the task of finding the box, and she would not fail. The road ahead was uncertain, but her love for Cupid, still burning brightly within her chest, was the only light she needed. As she ventured deeper into the realm of shadows, Psyche soon encountered a guide, a figure who appeared out of the gloom, a shadow among shadows. It was Charon, the ferryman of the underworld, who carried souls across the river Styx to the realm of the dead. His eyes, though ancient and filled with sorrow, softened as he gazed upon Psyche. "Why do you come, mortal?" Charon asked, his voice like the rustle of dry leaves. "The dead do not welcome the living." "I seek the queen of the dead," Psyche replied, her voice steady despite the fear she felt. "I must ask Persephone for a box of beauty." Charon looked at her with a mixture of pity and concern. "Many have ventured here with similar requests, but few have returned. The underworld is not kind to those who do not belong." Psyche swallowed the lump in her throat and stepped forward. "I must go," she said, her voice unwavering. "For love." At those words, Charon nodded solemnly. "Then I will take you across. But be careful, mortal. The journey does not end with Persephone. You must tread carefully in the realm of shadows." With that, he gestured to his boat, which sat on the shores of the Styx. Psyche stepped aboard, the boat creaking under her weight. As they crossed the river, the waters grew blacker, the air colder, and the land around them darker still. Shadows seemed to stretch from every corner, whispering tales of the dead. Yet Psyche remained focused, her mind fixed on Persephone, who alone could give her what she sought. Upon reaching the shores of the underworld, Psyche stepped off the boat and began her journey toward Persephone's palace, which lay deep within the darkness. The silence was overwhelming, and the weight of the underworld pressed against her, as though the very air was alive with sorrow. At last, she came to the palace of Persephone. The queen of the dead sat upon a throne of obsidian, her pale skin gleaming in the dim light. Her dark eyes watched Psyche with a cold, knowing gaze. Though she was the queen of the underworld, Persephone was not without her own beauty. There was an ethereal grace about her, an aura of power and mystery that made her seem both distant and untouchable. "I know why you are here, mortal," Persephone said, her voice a soft murmur in the stillness of the palace. "You seek the box of beauty, but understand this. This gift comes with a price. It is not a gift given lightly, nor is it one that can be taken without consequence." Psyche, undeterred, stepped forward and spoke with quiet resolve. "I have come for the box. I will endure whatever it costs to prove my love." Persephone regarded her for a moment, her eyes like pools of shadow, before she nodded. "Very well. The box is yours. But remember, once you take it, it must remain closed. The contents of this box are not meant for mortal eyes." With that, Persephone handed Psyche the box, its surface cold and smooth to the touch. It was small, yet it felt heavy, as though it carried with it the weight of the entire underworld. Psyche took it carefully, her fingers trembling as she grasped the box. She thanked the queen and turned to leave. But as she did, Persephone's voice called out to her, "Remember, mortal, once you leave the underworld, you cannot return. If you open the box, you will unleash something that cannot be contained." Psyche nodded, her heart heavy with the responsibility now in her hands. She had the box, and she had completed the task, but her greatest challenge now awaited. The underworld had tested her courage, but the temptation to open the box would be her final trial. With the box of beauty in hand, Psyche began the long and treacherous journey back from the underworld. The shadowed land, filled with whispers of the dead, felt even darker now as she left Persephone's palace. Each step she took away from the realm of the dead seemed to lift a heavy weight from her shoulders, but it was replaced by another, more subtle burden, the temptation of the box. As she crossed the river, Styx once more, Charon gave her a grave, silent nod, his weathered face reflecting the knowledge of the trials she had endured. "Remember," he said quietly, "what you carry is not to be opened. The gods speak in riddles, and their gifts come at a cost." Psyche's fingers tightened around the box as she stepped onto the shores of the living once more. The river behind her faded into the darkness, and though she could hear the echoes of the underworld retreating, the weight of the box remained pressing against her chest. It was as though the box itself had taken on a life of its own, drawing her thoughts to it with every passing moment. Though the path home was familiar, it felt different now. The earth beneath her feet seemed colder, the air more oppressive. The world felt both distant and near at once, as if she were caught between the living and the dead. The road stretched out before her, but every step led her deeper into a conflict that began to gnaw at her soul. The promise of Venus, that she must not open the box, echoed in her mind, but so too did the voice of Persephone, warning her of the danger that lay within. What could possibly be inside? What secret of beauty could so threaten the mortal world? The curiosity that had driven her to disobey once before now surged within her again. Could one glance truly destroy her? As Psyche walked, the landscape around her seemed to change. The bright sky, once warm and filled with light, grew clouded. The sun, now hidden behind a veil of grey, no longer offered the same comforting warmth. The air became heavy, and the once familiar trees loomed ominously along the path, their twisted branches reaching like gnarled hands toward the box she carried. The further Psyche travelled, the more the temptation of the box consumed her thoughts. It seemed to call to her, its allure growing stronger with each passing step. It was as if the box held the key to some deeper truth, some secret about her own soul, her love for Cupid, or even the very nature of beauty itself. Was it possible that the box contained the answers to everything? Was this the final test, to resist the urge to open it? Despite her growing inner turmoil, Psyche pressed on. Her love for Cupid had driven her this far, and she could not let herself falter now. The memory of his face, his warm embrace, and the promise of their reunion filled her heart, urging her forward. Yet, the box was a constant reminder that she was not free. She was bound to the will of the gods, to the commands they had set before her. But even as she continued her journey, the temptation grew unbearable. Her hand shook as it clutched the box, her thoughts swirling in confusion. What harm could it do? Just one small peek. The consequences seemed so far away, so abstract. Surely one moment of curiosity could not undo all the good she had done. Perhaps, just perhaps, opening the box would provide the final answer, the key that would unlock the mystery of her love and her trials. It was as if the box were speaking to her, urging her to yield. In her heart, Psyche could feel the pull of desire for the answers, for the completion of her journey, and for the resolution of all that had been left uncertain. She had endured so much, faced impossible odds, and yet now, in the final step of her trials, it seemed as though everything hung on the decision she would make next. The road stretched endlessly before her, but Psyche paused for a moment. She sat down on a large rock beside the path, the box resting in her lap. The air around her seemed still, the world holding its breath. Her fingers, trembling with indecision, hovered above the box's smooth surface. The struggle inside her was fierce. She could feel Cupid's presence in her heart, urging her to resist the temptation. She could hear the gentle whisper of his love, reminding her of all she had endured, of all that she had overcome. But even with his voice in her heart, the temptation continued to call her, louder and louder, until it drowned out all else. And so, as the clouds gathered in the sky above, Psyche made her decision. With a deep, shaky breath, she opened the box. At first, nothing seemed to happen. The world was quiet, the stillness settling in the air like a thick fog. Psyche stared at the box, her breath shallow, her eyes wide with anticipation. But then, from the box, a soft light began to seep out, a pale glow that filled the air around her. It was as if the box held something beyond mortal comprehension, a radiance that seemed to pulse with an otherworldly power. But then, the light began to wane. It was not a beauty, but a shadow. And within that shadow, an overwhelming wave of sleep washed over her. It was as if the very essence of her being was being drained, the vitality of her soul fading into a deep, heavy slumber. Her eyes fluttered shut, her body slumping forward as the sleep took hold of her. Unbeknownst to Psyche, the box had not contained beauty as she had imagined, but the very sleep of death. It was a gift from Persephone, a trap designed to pull her into a slumber from which there would be no waking. Psyche's form lay still, slumped on the rock where she had sat moments before, the box of beauty open beside her. The world around her was eerily silent, the once vibrant air now thick and heavy with the weight of her decision. The light from the box flickered like a fading star, its soft glow slowly dimming, as if retreating from the mortal world. A deep sleep had overtaken Psyche, and all that remained was an endless, dreamless void. Her soul, once filled with determination, love, and yearning, now floated in that endless, dark space. The days turned to weeks, and the world moved on without her, leaving her body untouched, suspended in time. Her hair, once carefully braided and shining in the sunlight, now lay tangled and heavy, as though the sleep she had summoned had begun to take its toll on her very being. Yet, in the distant heavens, there was movement, a stir, a faint pull, a love that had not been forgotten. Cupid, the god of love, flew through the skies, his golden bow at the ready, seeking those who had fallen prey to the arrows of passion. But there was something in his heart, a pang that had been haunting him since the day Psyche had opened the box. He had watched from afar as Psyche journeyed through her trials, each step drawing her closer to him, but he had never revealed himself. He had trusted her to complete the tasks set by Venus, trusting that her love for him would be enough to overcome every obstacle. Yet, even as he had watched, he had feared that the trials would break her, that the final test would be too great. Now, as he soared through the heavens, he could feel something in the air, a shift, a change that was unmistakable. His heart, once light and joyful, grew heavy with dread. It was as if the very threads of fate had been tugged in the wrong direction. He felt her, Psyche, though he had not seen her in so long. A strange pull drew him closer to the earth, and with a sense of urgency, he descended toward the place where his love lay. He arrived to find her there, beneath the shadow of the rock, her body pale and unmoving. The box of beauty lay open beside her, its soft light now extinguished. Cupid's heart lurched as he knelt beside her, his hands trembling as he reached for her. His gaze fell upon her closed eyes, her face serene and untouched by time. Yet there was an undeniable stillness about her that sent a chill through him. Psyche had been his only love, his only joy. Yet, in her pursuit of him, in her desire to prove her devotion, she had unknowingly sealed her own fate. The sleep that had overtaken her was the result of her own curiosity, a moment of weakness in which she had defied the gods' warning. But Cupid would not allow her to remain in this state. He could not. With a mixture of sorrow and hope, Cupid leaned over her and kissed her forehead. The kiss, though soft, was imbued with his divine power, a power born of love itself. As his lips brushed against her skin, a gentle warmth began to spread from where he touched her, filling her with the glow of life once more. Psyche's eyelids fluttered, her long lashes brushing against the cool air. Her breath caught, and slowly she opened her eyes. She was met with the sight of Cupid's face, his warm gaze searching hers with a tenderness that seemed to reach into the very depths of her soul. For a moment, neither spoke. The world felt still, as though everything had come to a quiet halt. And then, in a whisper that seemed to carry the weight of the entire universe, Psyche spoke. I failed you," she said, her voice trembling, still heavy with the remnants of sleep. "I opened the box. I could not resist." Cupid's heart ached as he gently cupped her face in his hands. "No, Psyche," he replied softly. "You did not fail me. You never failed me. The gods can be cruel, and their trials are harsh. But love is not bound by their rules. Your heart was true, and that is all that matters." Tears filled Psyche's eyes as she gazed into Cupid's, the warmth of his love surrounding her, healing the wounds of the trials she had endured. "But the box," she murmured, still struggling to understand. "I opened it, and it was my undoing." Cupid smiled softly, brushing her tears away. The box held nothing but the sleep of death. It was a test, not of your strength, but of your heart. You have passed every trial, not through perfection, but through your love and your devotion. The gods may set their tasks, but love cannot be contained in a box. You were never meant to suffer for eternity. As Cupid spoke, Psyche felt a warmth spread through her chest. The heaviness that had clouded her heart lifted, and the deep ache that had plagued her during the trials seemed to melt away. She could feel the love they shared, the bond that had once been torn apart, now gently mended. Cupid's gaze softened, his expression full of affection. "Come with me," he said gently. "The trials are over. You have proven yourself, and I shall no longer be hidden from you. We will be together, and no force in the heavens or on earth will keep us apart." With that, Cupid reached out his hand to Psyche, offering her a life beyond the trials and suffering, a life where their love would no longer be shadowed by the will of the gods. Psyche took his hand, her fingers curling around his with a sense of peace she had never known. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, she felt truly at home, truly loved. As Psyche's hand rested in Cupid's, she felt the last remnants of doubt dissolve. She had endured so much, trials set by gods, temptations that pulled at her very soul, and a darkness that had nearly claimed her. But now, here in Cupid's presence, there was nothing but warmth, love, and a profound peace that filled her heart. They were reunited, and nothing could tear them apart. Cupid gazed at Psyche with tenderness, his golden eyes shining brighter than the stars themselves. "It is time," he said softly, his voice a quiet promise. "The gods have tested you, but your heart has proven pure. You have earned the right to be with me, to join me in the heavens. Psyche, still gazing at him with wonder and awe, nodded. But what of the gods? What of Venus? You said she would never allow us to be together. Cupid's expression darkened for a moment, a shadow passing across his face. Venus may never approve of our love, but I no longer fear her wrath. Our love is stronger than any trial she sets before us. The gods may have the power to shape the world, but love has the power to change it. Psyche felt a rush of gratitude and hope flood her heart. She had feared that she might never find her place in the world, that her love for Cupid would always be thwarted by the gods' whims. But now, with Cupid by her side, she knew that no matter what Venus or the other gods might do, they could face it together. "Then what happens now?" Psyche asked, her voice soft but filled with curiosity. "Where do we go from here?" Cupid smiled, and the warmth of that smile seemed to radiate across the heavens themselves. "We go where love takes us. We will be together, and nothing will stand in our way." With that, Cupid gently lifted Psyche into his arms, his wings beating softly against the air. Together, they ascended from the earth, rising higher and higher, past the clouds and the stars, until they reached the very heavens themselves. Psyche, though no longer a mortal, still felt the awe of ascending into the divine realm. The sights were beyond any words she could speak. Glowing constellations, brilliant galaxies, and the eternal light of the gods stretching out into the infinite expanse of the cosmos. As they ascended, Cupid spoke of the divine plan that was to come. "You have proven yourself worthy of being with me," he said. "But you are also worthy of something more, a place among the gods. You will become one of us, Psyche. You will be immortal just as I am. And together we will shape the world in our image, a world of love and beauty." Psyche's heart swelled with awe, but even more so with humility. To be made immortal, to live forever in the realm of the gods, was a gift beyond measure. But what struck her most was the thought of becoming part of Cupid's world, of sharing in his divinity and his eternal love. It was a promise she had never dared to hope for, yet now it was becoming a reality. When they reached the highest point of the heavens, the great palace of the gods spread out before them, golden and radiant. In this divine realm, time flowed differently. Everything was timeless, eternal. Here, the trials of the mortal world held no sway. Psyche's transformation began as she was bathed in the light of the gods. Her mortal form began to shimmer and glow, her body transforming into something radiant and eternal. Her skin, once delicate and fragile, became luminous, and her eyes sparkled like stars. She felt a profound peace settle over her, and in that moment she understood. She was no longer the mortal woman who had struggled through the trials of the gods. She was something more, something divine. Cupid placed a gentle kiss on her lips, his eyes filled with adoration. "Welcome to your new life, Psyche," he whispered. "You are now one of us, a goddess, and you will walk with me through eternity." In that moment, the heavens themselves seemed to pause, as if acknowledging the power of their union. The divine realm, which had once seemed distant and inaccessible to her, now felt like home. It was a place where love reigned supreme, and all things were possible. Psyche and Cupid stood side by side, their love now no longer bound by earthly limitations. As the gods looked upon them, they saw not a mortal woman and a divine god, but two beings united by love, an eternal love that could not be destroyed. And as they stood together, hand in hand, The bond between them became a symbol of the power of love itself, a love that transcended even the boundaries of immortality. Psyche's transformation into a goddess was not only a reward for her trials, but also a reflection of the love she and Cupid shared. Through her suffering and devotion, she had proven that love was not just a fleeting emotion, but a force that could reshape the very fabric of existence. Her ascension to divinity marked the beginning of a new era, one in which love and beauty would reign supreme, both on earth and in the heavens. Cupid and Psyche, now united as gods, would go on to create a realm where love was cherished above all else. Together, they would watch over the world, guiding those who sought love and protecting those whose hearts were pure. Their love would become a legend, passed down through the ages, a reminder that even in the face of impossible trials, love could overcome all. And so, Psyche, once a mortal woman, lost and struggling in the face of divine obstacles, was reborn, her soul eternally entwined with that of Cupid, the god of love. Together, they would live on forever, their love shining like a beacon for all who believed in the power of the heart. As Psyche settled into her divine existence, her transformation into a goddess was not the final chapter of her journey, but the beginning of a new chapter in the grand tale of love. Her bond with Cupid had created not just a union of souls, but a union of realms, the mortal and the divine. Their love had transcended all earthly boundaries, and now, in the eternal halls of Olympus, it would bear fruit in the most profound of ways. In time, Psyche discovered a tender and life-altering truth. She was with child. This was no ordinary child, for she carried the child of love itself, the offspring of the god of love and the goddess of the soul. Her heart swelled with joy, for she knew that this child would be a manifestation of all the beauty, passion, and purity that their love had created. Cupid, too, was overjoyed by the news. His golden eyes shimmered with pride as he gazed upon Psyche, the love of his life, now carrying their child. It seemed that their union, forged through the most unimaginable trials, was now becoming the very source of life, nurturing the world with its boundless energy. Their child would not only be a symbol of their eternal love, but a new force that would bring the essence of love into the world, ensuring that it would continue to grow and flourish for all eternity. The child that Psyche carried was destined for greatness. She would be born with the power to inspire love, the ability to awaken hearts to the beauty of the world and the divine. Her name was Voluptas, a name that spoke to the pleasures and joys of life, the delight of the senses, and the sweet essence of love that could bind souls together in eternal harmony. In the moment of her birth, Voluptas radiated an ethereal glow. She was not born with the vulnerability of a mortal child. Rather, she emerged from the divine union of her parents fully formed, a goddess in her own right. Her hair shimmered like spun gold, and her eyes sparkled with the light of the stars. As she was placed in her mother's arms, Psyche felt an overwhelming sense of love and fulfillment, a deep peace that seemed to transcend all understanding. Cupid, ever the doting father, gazed upon his daughter with admiration and joy. He knew that Voluptas would carry forward the legacy of their love. She was the living embodiment of what had brought him and Psyche together. And just as Psyche had been transformed from a mortal to a goddess, so too would Voluptas embody the eternal nature of their love, casting it into the hearts of all who encountered her. As the gods of Olympus looked on, there was a collective sense of awe and wonder. Voluptas was a reminder to all of them of the power of love to create life, to create beauty, and to shape the world in its image. She was the child of the heart, born of the divine forces that had shaped the heavens and the earth. With each passing day, her presence in the divine realm would serve as a beacon of love's purity, a reminder that love itself was a force that could move the world, create worlds, and bring all things into harmony. Psyche, now a mother, felt a deep sense of connection not only to Cupid, but also to the world around her. She had seen how love had shaped her life, how it had carried her through the darkest of trials, and how it had lifted her to the highest heights. Now she would watch as her daughter Voluptas would do the same, sowing seeds of love and joy throughout the world. It was clear that Psyche and Cupid's union would be remembered forever, not only for their own story of love and perseverance, but also for the legacy they created through their daughter. Voluptas would grow to become the goddess of pleasure, the deity who inspired love and happiness in every soul she touched. Her presence would weave through the hearts of mortals and gods alike, making all who encountered her feel the sweetness and power of affection, joy, and beauty. The birth of Voluptas, as extraordinary as it was, also marked the fullness of Psyche's transformation. She had been tested by the gods, challenged by impossible trials, and had emerged from them not only victorious, but now eternally connected to the divine. She was not just a goddess, she was a mother, a creator of life, an embodiment of love itself. Cupid, too, had undergone a transformation in the presence of their child. The love he had always known for Psyche now expanded to encompass the love for their daughter, a new kind of tenderness that softened his divine spirit. Together, they would watch as their daughter spread love throughout the world, as she touched the hearts of all who sought her grace. As Voluptas grew in the divine realm, the gods would come to seek her influence, for even they, in their infinite power, could not escape the magic of love's transformative nature. Her laughter, her joy, her very presence in the world would be enough to remind them that even gods, in their might, were subject to the deepest forces of the heart. And so, as Psyche cradled her daughter in her arms, she could not help but reflect on the journey that had led her here, on the trials, the fears, the long nights spent in uncertainty, and the eventual union that had brought her to this moment of serenity. She had faced the worst the world and the gods had to offer, but through it all she had held steadfast to the one thing that had always guided her: love. Now, with Cupid by her side and Voluptas in her arms, she knew that her story was far from over. It was just the beginning of a new chapter, one that would be written not in hardship or suffering, but in the joy and beauty of an eternal love that would forever illuminate the heavens. Thus, the story of Psyche, Cupid, and Voluptas would continue to echo through the ages, a reminder to all who heard it of the transcendent power of love. It would be a love that could elevate mortals to the heavens, that could inspire gods to change, and that could unite the universe in a single, eternal embrace. And it would be a love that would forever endure, as eternal as the stars themselves. The presence of Voluptas in the divine realm brought an unmistakable lightness to the air, an energy that was felt by all who dwelled in the heavens. She was the child of Psyche and Cupid, born from the very essence of love, and as such, she radiated a unique and enchanting beauty, one that was both gentle and powerful. In her, the harmonious union of her parents was manifest in a goddess who embodied the joys of love, the pleasures of the heart, and the sweetness of life's most tender emotions. From the moment of her birth, Voluptas became a symbol of love's most carefree and delightful aspects. While her parents' story had been one of trials, sacrifices, and hard-won victories, Voluptas represented a different aspect of love, one of serenity, joy, and the lightness of the soul. She was the breath of fresh air after a storm, the laughter that follows tears, and the gentle caress of affection that stirs the spirit. Her very name, Voluptas, spoke of sensual delight and the bliss of the senses, qualities that would come to define her as a goddess. As she grew, her beauty became legendary, not just for her outward appearance, but for the way she made others feel. Her laughter was like the sound of chimes in a soft breeze, her touch as comforting as the warmth of the sun after a cold winter. Voluptas had the ability to inspire love, not only between lovers, but in all forms of connection, whether familial, platonic, or even within the hearts of strangers. It was said that to be in her presence was to be filled with a sense of peace, contentment, and well-being. Her mere smile could melt the hardest of hearts, and her gentle gaze could soothe the most troubled souls. The gods of Olympus, who had known the full spectrum of existence, from the rage of war to the sorrow of loss, found themselves enchanted by Voluptas's presence. Even they, mighty as they were, could not resist the simple and profound joy that her divinity brought to their lives. It was said that she could bring moments of peace to the most tempestuous of gods, and in her company, even the great Zeus himself was known to smile. Voluptas, like her mother, understood the power of love. But while Psyche had learned it through trials and suffering, Voluptas embodied it naturally, effortlessly. She was a goddess not of hardship, but of sweetness, a reminder that love could also be light and joyous. Her role in the divine world was clear. She was to be the guardian of pleasure, of happiness, and of the shared joys that made life worth living. She would remind the gods and mortals alike that love, in its purest form, was not always something to be struggled for. It could also be something to be celebrated. Despite her light-hearted nature, Voluptas was not without wisdom. She understood that love, in all its forms, required balance. She knew that the pleasures of the world, while beautiful, must be tempered by the knowledge that life, in all its fullness, also held moments of sadness and pain. She did not shy away from these truths, but rather embraced them with grace, knowing that without sorrow there could be no true joy. And so, in her quiet way, Voluptas became a teacher, guiding both gods and mortals toward a harmonious understanding of the world's pleasures and pains. It is said that, in the mortal realm, Voluptas became a muse for artists, poets, and lovers. Her influence spread far and wide, touching the hearts of all who sought to know love's gentler aspects. Many found inspiration in her, and her name was invoked whenever passion, tenderness, and beauty were desired. In the quiet moments of life, when lovers shared a soft glance, or when families gathered in warmth, it was said that Voluptas was near, blessing their unions with the purity of her divine essence. In time, Voluptas's influence would also extend to the hearts of mortals who had never known love in its most tender forms. Her power reached into every corner of the earth, bringing comfort to those who had suffered, healing to those who had been broken, and joy to those who had lost their way. She was a goddess who nurtured the spirit, who encouraged growth and harmony, and who reminded all who encountered her that love was not just an emotion. It was a force of life, one that connected all beings in an unbreakable bond. As Psyche and Cupid looked upon their daughter, they saw not only the reflection of their own love, but the possibility of something greater, a world where love, in all its forms, could blossom and thrive. Voluptus was not just their child, she was their legacy. She was the embodiment of the divine love they had fought so hard to protect. And now, in her radiant presence, that love had a new form, one that would transcend even the eternal heavens. Psyche, who had once been a mortal woman, now stood as the mother of a goddess, a being who would shape the world with her gentle hand. Her heart swelled with pride and gratitude, knowing that the love she and Cupid shared would endure not only through their own eternal bond, but through the very spirit of their daughter. Cupid, too, watched Voluptus with deep affection. He had seen her born from love itself, and he had witnessed the way she spread warmth and happiness to all around her. He knew that she would bring something new to the divine realm, something that would touch even the gods who had never known the sweetness of love's gentler side. In the quiet moments of their lives, as the gods and goddesses of Olympus gathered in peace, it was often Voluptus who reminded them of the beauty in simple pleasures. She was a goddess who did not seek power, but rather sought to uplift others, to offer them the joys that came from love, from connection, from being alive in the world. Her influence was felt in the way the gods interacted with one another, in the laughter shared between them, the moments of tenderness that passed between those who were otherwise mighty and untouchable. Even Zeus, known for his thunderous presence, would soften when Voluptus was near, as though her gentle nature had a calming effect on his stormy heart. She was a balm to the often harsh realities of the divine world, a reminder that even gods needed love, peace, and joy to thrive. And so, Voluptus continued to live in the divine halls of Olympus, her laughter echoing through the heavens like a sweet melody, a reminder that love could be both a force of creation and a force of joy. Her legacy, intertwined with that of Psyche and Cupid, became one that would endure for millennia, inspiring generations of gods and mortals alike to embrace love in all its forms. The divine union of Psyche and Cupid, long fraught with trials, tests, and separations, had finally culminated in the highest of heavens. Together, they had triumphed over every obstacle set before them by the gods. Psyche's strength and perseverance, Cupid's love and devotion. And now, at last, they stood side by side as equals in the divine realm, a marriage not just of souls, but of purpose. Their love, once a quiet whisper against the chaos of Olympus, now resonated as a powerful and harmonious chord that could never be broken. The day of their wedding, though it was not marked by extravagant festivities or the grandeur of earthly ceremonies, was celebrated in a way befitting their unique bond. The gods, knowing the significance of this union, gathered to witness this sacred moment. It was not a marriage in the conventional sense, for the love shared by Psyche and Cupid had transcended human understanding. It was a divine commitment, forged through struggle and sacrifice, now unbreakable in its eternal form. The heavens themselves seemed to pause in reverence as Cupid and Psyche stood together, their hands entwined, their hearts beating as one. Their union was not just a joining of two divine beings, but the embodiment of a love that had endured and grown stronger in the face of the most difficult trials. They were not merely husband and wife, they were the very essence of love, of longing, of sacrifice, of devotion. They had been through the depths of despair and emerged into the light of eternity. And now their love would never be subject to the whims of gods or fate again. Psyche, radiant in her transformation, stood in the presence of the gods, her beauty now immortal, glowing with the divine light of her new existence. She was no longer the mortal woman who had once struggled to prove her worth. She was a goddess, reborn in the fire of love, with an eternal place among the gods. Her eyes, filled with the wisdom of her journey, looked lovingly upon her husband, the god of love himself. Cupid, his wings unfurled in all their golden glory, gazed at Psyche with an affection that transcended time and space. His golden eyes, once filled with mischief and youthful exuberance, now shone with a deep, unshakable tenderness. He had loved her from the moment their paths had first crossed, and through all the trials, all the pain and all the heartache, that love had only grown stronger. The ceremony itself was simple. There were no grand speeches or complicated rites. Their vows had already been spoken through the trials they had faced and the love they had shared. In the presence of the gods, they reaffirmed their commitment to each other, not through words, but through their very beings. Their love was the vow, eternal and unbreakable. As they stood hand in hand, the gods of Olympus, including Jupiter and Venus, the gods who had once sought to tear them apart, looked on. Jupiter, the king of the gods, acknowledged the profound power of their union. It was clear to him that the love between Psyche and Cupid was not one that could be easily defined, nor could it be destroyed. It was a love that had transcended the very essence of mortality, and in doing so, it had become something greater than the gods themselves. Venus, though still wary of the union, could not deny the love that shone between her son and Psyche. She had seen it grow, had watched as Psyche had proven herself worthy of Cupid's heart. Though her pride and her desire to control love would never fully ease, she could not help but feel a stirring of admiration for the couple. They had overcome her obstacles, they had defied the gods, and now they stood victorious in their love. This marriage, though unconventional in its simplicity, was nothing less than extraordinary. It was a union between two divine beings, forged not in a grand celebration, but in the quiet understanding that love itself was the most powerful force in the universe. It was a love that had brought Psyche from the depths of despair to the highest of heavens, a love that had endured the hardest trials, and a love that would last for all eternity. In the days that followed, Psyche and Cupid's union became a symbol of the power of love, a reminder to all that love, even in the face of adversity, would always find a way. It was not the love of the gods that had brought them together, but the love that transcended all, the love that existed beyond mortal comprehension. Together, they were no longer mere lovers, but the embodiment of love itself. The marriage of Psyche and Cupid was not simply a turning point in their personal journey, but a shift in the very nature of love in the divine realm. Where once love had been a force to be tested and controlled, it was now revered as the highest form of divine power. The gods began to see love not as a fleeting emotion, but as the central force that bound the universe together. It was a realization that would change the way they interacted with the world and with each other. As time passed, Psyche and Cupid's love continued to flourish. They created a realm of beauty and peace, where love was cherished above all else. Their marriage was not just a union of two souls, but a foundation for the world they would build together. In this new world, love would not be bound by the harsh trials of the past. It would be celebrated in its purest and most joyful forms. Through their divine marriage, Psyche and Cupid showed the gods and mortals alike that love, in its most eternal form, was not about possession or control, but about freedom, understanding, and a shared commitment to something greater than oneself. Their love would be a guiding light for all who sought its power, and their union would forever be a symbol of the purity and strength of love that endures beyond all obstacles. As the divine couple, Psyche and Cupid, continued to walk through the halls of Olympus, their love began to reshape the very fabric of the divine realm. Their union, now celebrated by the gods themselves, was not merely a personal triumph. It was a testament to the transformative power of love, which, in time, would alter the way the gods interacted with one another, as well as how they viewed the mortals below. Through their love, Psyche and Cupid had become central to the workings of the divine order, their roles elevated to a place where love itself governed the heavens. In the days following their marriage, Cupid, as the god of love, continued to carry out his duties, shooting his arrows of affection into the hearts of gods and mortals alike. But now his role had expanded. As he and Psyche stood together, their love became the very force that bound the universe in a new, more harmonious way. Love was no longer merely a tool of passion or desire. It had become the cornerstone of peace, the force through which the gods would understand each other and the mortals they ruled. Psyche, too, found herself stepping into a new role. No longer the mortal woman who had endured hardship and doubt, she had become a goddess of the soul, of purity and of transformation. Where once she had wandered, lost and uncertain, now she walked with the confidence of one who had embraced her true nature. As Cupid's partner, Psyche became an integral part of his work, a guide for souls in need of love and understanding. Together, they formed a union that was greater than the sum of its parts. They worked in tandem, balancing one another with their complementary gifts. Cupid, with his arrows, would inspire love in those whose hearts had grown cold or distant, while Psyche, with her profound understanding of the soul's journey, helped those who struggled to find meaning and connection. She helped them navigate the emotional and spiritual landscapes of their hearts, showing them that love was not only a fleeting sensation, but a deep, transformative experience. As the gods witnessed the profound change that Cupid and Psyche brought to the realm, they began to understand that their love was not just a personal bond, but a cosmic one. Love, they realized, was the force that connected all things: gods and mortals, the stars and the earth, joy and sorrow. It was the force that kept the world in balance and ensured that all beings had a place in the universe. This new understanding of love's power began to influence the way the gods governed. They became more mindful of the ways in which their actions affected the hearts of mortals. They saw that their decisions, whether in the realms of justice, war, or the natural world, had deep emotional consequences, and they sought to govern with a gentler hand. The gods were no longer seen merely as distant, mighty figures. They became figures who could be moved by the same forces that shaped the lives of mortals. In this way, love bridged the gap between the divine and the mortal realms. Psyche's role, too, was critical. While Cupid continued to inspire love with his arrows, Psyche began to serve as the guide to those who sought to understand love more deeply. She became a deity of compassion, of healing, and of transformation. Souls who were lost in grief, confusion, or fear sought her guidance, and in her presence they found solace. With every soul she touched, she reminded them that love, though often difficult and complex, was the key to healing and self-understanding. In this new role, Psyche also took on the responsibility of caring for the hearts of mortals. She was a goddess who helped souls navigate the turbulent emotions that often accompanied love. Those who sought her wisdom came to realize that love was not simply a joyous, blissful feeling. It was also an emotional journey, full of growth, pain, and renewal. Psyche, with her understanding of the heart, was the perfect guide to help them through these emotional storms. Together, Psyche and Cupid were no longer merely two lovers who had been united by fate. They had become the pillars of the divine order, the embodiment of love itself. Their presence was felt in every corner of the universe, as their love rippled through the hearts of gods and mortals alike. Through them, the world was learning that love was not just something to be experienced, but something to be understood and cultivated. Cupid's influence, ever potent, continued to shape the hearts of gods, while Psyche's wisdom provided the key to understanding and nurturing love in its truest form. Their union had become a guiding light, a reminder that love, at its core, was the most powerful and enduring force in the world. The gods, who once viewed love as a chaotic and unpredictable force, began to see it as something more sacred, something that needed to be nurtured and protected. They no longer sought to control or possess love, but rather to honor it. As their understanding of love deepened, they began to live more harmoniously, no longer pitting themselves against one another, but working together in the spirit of love's true purpose. The mortal realm, too, felt the effects of Cupid and Psyche's union. The love between the two gods became a model for all who sought connection, inspiring mortals to approach their own relationships with a greater sense of empathy, compassion, and patience. The ripple effect of their divine love reached the earth, bringing healing and peace to the hearts of those who had suffered. No longer were mortals at the mercy of cruel, indifferent forces. They now had the guidance of Psyche and Cupid, who showed them that love, in all its forms, had the power to heal, transform, and unify. And so, the divine roles of Psyche and Cupid solidified. Together, they had become more than just a couple. They had become the living embodiment of love itself, and their influence would continue to spread throughout the heavens and the earth for all eternity. The gods, the mortals, and the very fabric of existence were forever changed by their union, and love, in its most pure and profound form, was elevated to its rightful place at the heart of all things. As the divine couple, Psyche and Cupid, continued their existence together in the heavens, their story began to ripple through the ages, leaving an indelible mark on the world below. The love they shared, once so fragile and contested, had transformed them into the very personifications of love's eternal power. Their union was no longer just a tale told by mortals in hushed whispers. It became a legend, a timeless reminder of the triumph of love over adversity, the transcendence of the mortal and the divine. The gods who had once tested Psyche, who had placed her in impossible situations, now looked to her and Cupid with reverence. They saw in them not just a love story, but the embodiment of a universal truth. That love, when pure and true, could overcome any trial, could endure even the most difficult of journeys. Their love was the mirror in which all other forms of love were reflected, whether it be the love of parents for their children, the bond between friends, or the deep affection shared between lovers. Psyche and Cupid became central figures in the divine realm. While their union had begun as a personal matter, one born of desire, conflict, and devotion, it had blossomed into something far greater, the foundation for a new order, a new understanding of the power of love. Together, they created a realm where love was the guiding force, a place where gods, mortals, and all beings could find peace through love's understanding. As time flowed like the river of the eternal heavens, their influence extended even further. Mortals, inspired by the tale of Psyche and Cupid, began to hold their relationships with greater care and reverence. Where once love had been seen as fleeting or unpredictable, the story of the goddess of the soul and the god of love taught humanity that love was a force that could be cultivated, nurtured, and protected. It was not something to be taken lightly, nor was it something that could be easily broken. It was, in fact, a sacred bond, a powerful energy that connected all things, both divine and mortal. Through their example, people learned that love could be transformative. Psyche had once been a mortal woman, vulnerable to the whims of fate and the gods. But through her steadfast devotion and her belief in love's power, she had been reborn into something greater. Her transformation from a fragile mortal into a radiant goddess became a symbol of the potential within every soul, of the ability to rise above adversity and embrace the fullness of one's true nature. It was a story of redemption, of growth, and of the healing that love could bring. Cupid, too, had evolved through his journey with Psyche. As the god of love, he had always known the power of affection, but his love for Psyche had expanded his understanding. His role as the instigator of love, the one who shot his arrows into the hearts of the gods and mortals alike, had deepened. He had come to see that love was not just a force of desire or passion, it was a force of healing, of understanding, of connection. And through his love for Psyche, he had come to understand that true love could not be manipulated or controlled, but must be freely given and received. Together, Psyche and Cupid became a guiding light for all who sought love's truth. In the divine realm, their presence brought harmony, while in the mortal world, their story inspired countless generations. Poets sang their praises, artists painted their likeness, and those who found themselves lost in love or heartache would whisper their names as a prayer, seeking to understand how love could be both tender and fierce, fragile and eternal. Even the greatest of gods, who once saw love as a mere tool to wield, came to see it as the most sacred of forces. In the halls of Olympus, where power and ambition often reigned supreme, Psyche and Cupid's love became a counterbalance, a reminder that true greatness was not defined by strength or control, but by the capacity to love unconditionally. This new understanding shifted the very way the gods interacted with one another, with the mortals who worshipped them, and with the world itself. Over time, the story of Psyche and Cupid became more than just a legend. It became became a foundation upon which other myths were built, a timeless narrative that would shape the storytelling of cultures across the world. It was a story of growth, of perseverance, and of the ultimate victory of love. In this way, their legacy was not only carried in the hearts of those who knew their names, but in the hearts of all those who believed in love's power to transcend the impossible. And as centuries passed, their influence continued to endure. Love became a central theme in art, literature, and philosophy. It was no longer seen as a mere emotion to be indulged, but as a transformative, life-shaping force. The gods, too, acknowledged the power of love in shaping the very nature of the cosmos. For if Psyche and Cupid, two beings once separated by divine obstacles, could transcend those barriers and create something so powerful and eternal, surely love itself could reshape the world in its image. Their story was passed from generation to generation, told and retold in the whispered tales of lovers and dreamers. It became a beacon, a light in the darkness, for all those who believed that love, no matter how difficult the journey, was worth the struggle. It was a reminder that even in the face of impossible odds, love could lead to transformation, to divine union, and to an eternal bond. And so, the legacy of Psyche and Cupid lived on, not as mere myth or legend, but as a living force, a force that continued to guide the hearts of gods and mortals alike. It was a legacy that transcended time, a timeless truth that love, in all its forms, had the power to change the world. The story of Psyche and Cupid, once confined to the distant whispers of the gods and mortals, began to spread beyond the divine realm, reaching the hearts and minds of human beings across the ancient world. As the legend grew, it transcended its origins in the heavens, becoming not just a tale of love, but a cultural and spiritual symbol of profound significance. The story, rich with themes of transformation, perseverance, and divine love, found a special place in the hearts of the ancient Greeks and Romans. Over time, the divine union of Psyche and Cupid would inspire the creation of cults and rituals, allowing mortals to honor the power of love through their worship. In ancient Greece, the myth of Psyche became intertwined with the worship of Aphrodite, the goddess of love, beauty, and fertility. While Aphrodite was traditionally seen as the goddess who governed love and passion, Psyche's story introduced a more intimate, human dimension to that love. A love not born solely of beauty or desire, but of purity, sacrifice, and devotion. Mortals began to see in Psyche the archetype of the soul's journey, from suffering through transformation to divine union with love itself. The story of Psyche's trials resonated deeply with the Greeks, who saw in her the struggles of the human condition, the pain of longing, the uncertainty of fate, and the eventual triumph of the soul. They would tell her story as a way of understanding their own relationships, their own struggles with love, and the deeper meaning of connection between human hearts. Psyche, in this context, became more than just a figure of myth. She was a representation of the journey that every mortal soul must undertake in the pursuit of true love, an enduring metaphor for the soul's evolution toward divine understanding. As the tale spread, it caught the imagination of the Romans as well. Under the rule of the emperors, particularly during the reign of Augustus, the Roman Empire found in the myth of Psyche a new form of divine adoration. The Romans, who were deeply influenced by Greek mythology, adopted the myth and integrated it into their own religious practices. In Rome, The cult of Psyche began to take shape, and her worship became a part of the broader Roman tradition of venerating divine forces associated with love, fertility, and beauty. In Roman society, Psyche's story was celebrated not only as a myth of personal transformation, but also as a social and spiritual allegory. Her trials and ultimate apotheosis symbolized the struggle for moral integrity, the journey of self-improvement, and the eventual victory of love over adversity. Roman devotees of Psyche were drawn to her as a figure of hope, a symbol of the possibility for redemption and divine favor. Her story spoke to the belief that no matter the obstacles placed before them, those who remained true to their hearts and endured hardship would be rewarded in the end. In the Roman context, Psyche's marriage to Cupid was also viewed as a powerful metaphor for the union between the human soul and the divine. Cupid, as the god of love, embodied the ideal of a perfect, transcendent love, one that was both earthly and divine. Psyche's eventual ascension into the heavens, becoming a goddess in her own right, was interpreted as the soul's return to the divine source, a final reunion with the eternal realm after a journey marked by trials and growth. This ascension mirrored the Roman belief in the soul's immortality and the idea of eventual spiritual union with the divine after a life of virtue. As the myth spread throughout the Roman Empire, the worship of Psyche was not restricted to the elite or the intellectuals alone. Common people, too, adopted her as a symbol of love's eternal power. They erected shrines in her honor, and her name was invoked in prayers for love, protection, and happiness. The practice of dedicating offerings to Psyche was common, and people believed that by doing so, they could receive her favor in matters of the heart and soul. These offerings often included flowers, perfumes, and delicate ornaments, symbols of beauty, love, and purity. Through these rituals, mortals sought to connect with the divine energy that Psyche represented, hoping to invite love, joy, and healing into their own lives. The Roman poets, who were well-versed in the power of mythology, also drew inspiration from the story of Psyche and Cupid. Writers such as Ovid, in his Metamorphoses, chronicled the love between Psyche and Cupid as a tale of transformation, a story that spoke to the metamorphosis not just of the characters, but of the very nature of love itself. Ovid's work, in particular, had a profound impact on how the myth was understood in the classical world. His poetic retelling of the story provided a rich emotional depth to Psyche's journey, emphasizing the themes of sacrifice, trust, and the transformative power of love. It was through the work of poets like Ovid that the myth of Psyche and Cupid gained an enduring place in the hearts of Romans, becoming a timeless symbol of the soul's yearning for love and union with the divine. As time passed, the influence of Psyche and Cupid only grew. The myth continued to inspire artists, poets, and philosophers for centuries, especially during the Renaissance, when interest in classical mythology experienced a revival. The image of Psyche, once a mortal woman who had endured trials to earn her place among the gods, was embraced by thinkers and artists as a symbol of human potential, of the ability to rise above earthly suffering and attain spiritual transcendence through love. Even in later centuries, the cult of Psyche and Cupid would persist in various forms. Her image would be painted, sculpted, and written about in countless ways, and her story would continue to serve as a reminder of the universal human experience, the quest for love, the trials that must be faced, and the ultimate reward of transformation and divine union. The enduring legacy of Psyche and Cupid is not only found in the annals of mythology, but in the hearts of those who have been touched by their story. Their love continues to inspire those who seek a deeper understanding of love's power and its ability to shape the course of lives, guiding souls toward a union that transcends time and space. The myth of Psyche and Cupid, as it continued to reverberate through the ages, was understood not only as a tale of divine love, but also as a profound allegory of the human soul's journey. The trials that Psyche faced, the obstacles set by Venus, and her ultimate reunion with Cupid carried deep symbolic meaning. Their story was interpreted by many as a metaphor for spiritual growth, the purification of the soul, and the transformation that comes through love, sacrifice, and redemption. Psyche, a mortal woman, began her journey in the realm of the earth, bound by the limitations and struggles of the human condition. Her initial trials, set by Venus, were not mere tests of her loyalty to Cupid, but reflections of the inner struggles that every human soul faces on its path to enlightenment. Venus, in her jealousy and anger, represented the forces of vanity, pride, and external expectations, forces that often cloud the path to true understanding. For Psyche, these trials symbolized the struggles one must endure when trying to break free from the constraints of the material world and the ego. The first of these trials, in which Psyche was tasked with sorting a vast heap of grains, was particularly significant. The grains themselves were a symbol of the scattered thoughts, desires, and distractions that fill the human mind. To sort them, Psyche had to focus her will and patience, demonstrating the need for mental discipline and clarity when faced with overwhelming challenges. The trial reminded her, and through her, all who heard the story, that in order to achieve spiritual growth, one must learn to sift through the noise of the world and focus on what truly matters. The second trial, where Psyche had to retrieve the golden wool from fierce sheep, represented the danger of succumbing to the passions of the world. The sheep, in their violent nature, embodied the unchecked desires that often pull the soul in different directions. Psyche's success in this task was symbolic of the soul's ability to tame these passions, to transform them into something useful, and to avoid being consumed by them. It was a reminder that desire, when approached with care and wisdom, could be a source of strength rather than destruction. The third trial, in which Psyche was sent to the underworld to retrieve a box of beauty from Persephone, marked a descent into the shadowy realms of the psyche. The underworld, where shadows and fears dwell, was a place of death and rebirth, representing the necessary journey into the depths of the unconscious mind. To retrieve the box, Psyche had to confront her deepest fears and temptations. Her failure to resist opening the box was symbolic of the soul's tendency to seek shortcuts to enlightenment or fulfillment. It was a reminder that the path to self-realization must be traveled with patience, humility, and acceptance of one's imperfections. Psyche's journey through these trials was ultimately a quest for purity, understanding, and connection with the divine. Each of her tasks was a step toward her transformation, a transformation that would not only reunite her with Cupid, but also elevate her to the status of a goddess. Her eventual apotheosis, her transformation from mortal to immortal, symbolized the soul's potential for divine union with love itself. In this way, Her story was a representation of the soul's ability to transcend its earthly limitations and achieve union with the divine, with love, and with the eternal. Cupid, in this context, was not just the god of love, but the divine force that guides the soul toward its highest purpose. His love for Psyche was the catalyst for her transformation. He represented the eternal, unconditional love that transcends time, space, and even the trials of life. His role was not to shield Psyche from difficulty, but to lead her through it, showing her that love, when truly embraced, could guide the soul to its highest potential. Cupid's arrows were not just weapons of passion. They were symbols of divine intervention, of the love that guides and inspires, that pushes the soul toward its destiny. The reunion of Psyche and Cupid, then, was not just a personal reconciliation, but a cosmic event representing the soul's reunion with divine love. It was a moment of harmony, of balance, where the human and divine, the mortal and immortal, merged into one. Their love was a reminder that love, in its truest form, is not just an emotion, but a force that shapes the very nature of existence. It is through love that the soul finds its purpose, its transformation, and its place within the larger cosmic order. The final aspect of their journey, the birth of Voluptas, brought the myth full circle. Voluptas, the goddess of pleasure, joy, and delight, was the child of Psyche and Cupid, a symbol of the creative, life-giving force of love. Her birth represented the manifestation of love's potential to bring beauty, joy, and renewal into the world. Voluptas was not just the product of Psyche and Cupid's love, but the living embodiment of the joy, pleasure, and fulfillment that love can bring to life. She was a reminder that love, while transformative, was also meant to be celebrated, experienced, and cherished. In the grand scheme of the myth, Psyche and Cupid's story became a universal archetype, one that was not bound by time or place, but spoke to the timeless nature of the human condition. Their journey of trials, transformation, and divine union was one that resonated deeply with people from all walks of life, as it spoke to the heart of what it means to seek love, to struggle, to grow, and to ultimately find peace and fulfillment. It was a story of the soul's path to enlightenment, guided by love and ultimately reunited with the divine. Through Psyche and Cupid, we are reminded that love is not simply a fleeting emotion or a transient experience. Love is a force that transcends the boundaries of the mortal and the divine, that has the power to transform, heal, and elevate the soul. It is the guiding light that leads us through the darkness of our trials and the key to our ultimate reunion with the eternal. The story of Psyche and Cupid, once confined to the ancient gods and the stories of old, continued to influence countless generations long after its origins in Greek and Roman mythology. As the centuries passed, their tale, one of love, trials, and ultimate transformation, began to inspire not only religious practices and cultural rituals, but also became deeply embedded in the art, literature, and philosophy of the modern world. Their love, which transcended mortal boundaries and overcame the might of the gods, became a model for understanding love's most profound aspects, its capacity to heal, to guide, and to elevate the human spirit. In the Renaissance, a period of great revival for classical antiquity, the myth of Psyche and Cupid was rediscovered and reimagined by artists, poets, and philosophers. They saw in Psyche's trials and her union with Cupid the ultimate metaphor for spiritual enlightenment, a journey that mirrored humanity's quest for deeper meaning and connection with the divine. The Renaissance brought forth an era of flourishing creativity, and the myth of Psyche, her suffering, transformation, and eventual apotheosis, spoke to the deeply human desire for self-improvement and transcendence. The visual arts flourished during this period, and artists such as Raphael, Titian, and Jean-Baptiste Regnault turned their attention to the myth of Psyche and Cupid, capturing the essence of their love in iconic paintings and sculptures. These works were not just simple depictions of the myth. They were rich with symbolism, depicting Psyche's emotional journey and the divine beauty of her reunion with Cupid. Psyche was often portrayed as an ethereal figure, radiant and otherworldly, a symbol of the soul's purity and divine potential. Cupid, too, was immortalized as the god whose love was not just a romantic desire, but a force capable of transforming the very essence of the human heart. The symbolism of Psyche and Cupid's story was so powerful that it continued to influence literary figures in the centuries that followed. In literature, the myth served as a blueprint for countless works of romantic fiction and allegorical narratives. Writers used the trials of Psyche as a way to explore the complexities of love, the sacrifices made in its name, and the deep, sometimes painful journey toward unity. The theme of the hero's journey was reinterpreted through the lens of Psyche's story. The challenges, doubts, and struggles she faced in her pursuit of love became a central motif in many works of romantic and existential literature. Her journey mirrored the soul's longing to overcome obstacles, transform through suffering, and attain a union with something greater than oneself. In the Romantic era, poets like John Keats and Percy Bysshe Shelley found inspiration in Psyche and Cupid's love, seeing their tale as the ultimate representation of the beauty and pain of human emotion. Keats, in particular, wrote a poem titled Psyche, in which he portrayed the goddess as an embodiment of idealized love and beauty. The idea of an eternal, perfect love that could survive the trials of life resonated deeply with the romantic sensibility, which placed great value on the passionate and often turbulent nature of love. The myth of Psyche and Cupid provided a spiritual framework for exploring themes of beauty, suffering, and transformation in their poetry. In more recent times, the legacy of Psyche and Cupid continues to influence modern popular culture, especially in the realm of film, television, and literature. The idea of a love so powerful that it transcends all obstacles and challenges continues to capture the imagination of writers and filmmakers. Their story has often been reinterpreted, with Psyche and Cupid serving as archetypal figures in romantic tales. The myth has become a model for love stories that emphasize deep, soulful connections, where true love is not just about passion, but about overcoming adversity, learning, and evolving together. The modern use of the Psyche and Cupid story often focuses on the theme of self-discovery through love. Psyche's transformation from a mortal woman into a goddess is seen as a metaphor for the growth and self-awareness that love can bring. In many modern adaptations, Psyche's journey is reimagined as one of emotional and psychological growth, where love is a force that challenges, refines, and elevates the soul. Cupid, often seen as the playful, mischievous god, is depicted as the catalyst for this transformation. His arrows are symbolic, not just of romantic affection, but of the deeper, often difficult work of emotional and spiritual awakening. In the 21st century, the myth of Psyche and Cupid has also found a place in the language of psychology and self-help. The archetypes represented in their story, the trials, the eventual reunion, and the elevation to the divine, serve as metaphors for the human experience of emotional healing and self-actualization. Many psychologists, particularly those in the realm of depth psychology, have used the myth to explore the process of individuation, where the self is reconciled with its deeper unconscious aspects. Psyche's journey, in this context, becomes a metaphor for the soul's path toward wholeness, learning to face one's own shadows, integrating the light and dark aspects of the self, and ultimately achieving a sense of unity and purpose. Furthermore, the myth continues to resonate in the age of digital storytelling. In video games, novels, and movies, the themes of Psyche's trials, her eventual ascension, and her reunion with Cupid are often echoed in the tales of characters who embark on transformative journeys of love and self-discovery. These modern adaptations of the myth serve as reminders that love is not just an emotion to be experienced, but a path to personal growth and spiritual awakening. In popular culture, the myth also endures as a symbol of the purity and power of love, especially in the face of adversity. Whether through reinterpretations in fantasy literature, superhero tales, or romantic dramas, the idea that love can overcome all challenges remains a powerful message. The symbolism of Psyche and Cupid's story as the ultimate union of soul and heart continues to inspire not only individuals seeking love, but also artists, creators, and thinkers who see in this myth a timeless expression of the transformative power of love. Through the lens of modern culture, Psyche and Cupid's legacy lives on as a source of inspiration for those who believe in the power of love to heal, to transform, and to guide the soul toward its highest potential. From the art of the Renaissance to the films of today, their love story has become a lasting reminder that even in the face of hardship, the love between two souls can create beauty, transcend obstacles, and bring about the divine. The tale of Psyche and Cupid is not merely a love story of two divine beings. It is also a deeply resonant myth that presents timeless archetypes, symbols of human experiences, struggles, and growth that have echoed throughout mythology across cultures. While their love story is unique, the figures of Psyche and Cupid embody universal themes that can be found in myths worldwide. From the trials of the hero to the journey of the soul toward enlightenment. Their archetypes serve as mirrors for our own internal struggles and the relationships we navigate in life, offering insight into love's transformative and healing power. At the heart of the myth is Psyche, who embodies the archetype of the heroine's journey. Often overlooked in the study of myth, the heroine's journey follows the same narrative structure as the traditional hero's journey, but with a more introspective, emotionally driven focus. Where the traditional hero's journey is often marked by outward quests for power, control, and battle, the heroine's path is one of inner transformation, spiritual awakening, and self-empowerment. Psyche's journey begins in innocence, marked by the overwhelming beauty that causes her to be envied by Venus. It is through her trials and sufferings, her vulnerability and emotional growth, that she emerges as a goddess, a representation of the potential for personal transcendence. Psyche's descent into the underworld to retrieve the beauty from Persephone can be seen as an archetypal descent into the unconscious, a theme that is present in numerous mythologies. This journey symbolizes the process of facing the shadow, confronting hidden fears, doubts, and painful memories. In many ways, it mirrors the psychological process of individuation, where a person must reconcile their conscious self with their deeper, unconscious desires and wounds. By making the journey, Psyche, like many mythic heroes and heroines, uncovers hidden truths about herself and grows through the experience, even when it challenges her most deeply. Her trials, sorting grains, retrieving the golden wool from the sheep, and bringing back the beauty from Persephone's realm, represent stages of the soul's purification, a central motif in many mythologies, particularly in the ancient world. These tasks, often perceived as burdensome and impossible, act as symbolic representations of the way we must clear away the distractions of the world and refine ourselves in order to reach a higher state of understanding and fulfillment. Psyche's trials represent the necessary inner work required for spiritual evolution, the act of overcoming personal flaws, learning from suffering, and achieving wisdom through perseverance. On the other side of this emotional and spiritual journey stands Cupid, who represents the archetype of divine love, Eros, in his purest and most transcendent form. As the god of love, Cupid is not just the instigator of romantic passion, but the force that moves the heart toward transcendence and spiritual union. His role in the myth is one of both testing and guidance. He does not simply deliver Psyche to her final form, but instead pushes her to prove her worth. He is both the catalyst for change and the one who, in the end, embraces Psyche, lifting her to a new existence as his equal. Cupid represents the part of us that seeks to connect, to unite, and to find harmony with others through love. However, like many figures in mythology, Cupid is not just a passive figure of affection. He is also the agent of transformation, embodying love's capacity to heal, challenge, and elevate. As a god, he often seems detached, playful, and distant, but his presence in Psyche's life is transformative. His love is not just emotional. It is a force that reshapes the soul, leading Psyche toward her own divine potential. His arrows, traditionally seen as instruments of desire and affection, take on a deeper meaning in this myth. They are symbolic of the love that propels us towards spiritual awakening, drawing us closer to our higher selves and to the divine. Their love, which begins as a secret and ultimately becomes public and divine, carries the archetypal theme of union of opposites, another powerful concept in mythology. Cupid and Psyche represent the harmony between the conscious and unconscious, the divine and the mortal, the light and the shadow. Their union is not simply an emotional one, but a symbolic joining of forces that are greater than themselves. Cupid's divine nature and Psyche's human experiences create a powerful balance, a union that allows both to transcend their limitations and become something greater than they were before. Their love brings out the best in both of them, illustrating the transformative power of true love when it is not rooted in mere desire, but in growth, understanding, and spiritual evolution. Psyche and Cupid's story also contains the archetype of the chthonic journey, a descent into the depths that ultimately leads to rebirth and transformation. Psyche's descent into the underworld, where she risks losing everything for the sake of love, mirrors the chthonic themes found in myths, like that of Persephone's own abduction to the underworld. These mythic figures all represent the soul's journey into darkness, in order to bring something light and beautiful back into the world. It is in the depths, in the places where the soul feels most lost or broken, that true transformation occurs. The chthonic archetype emphasizes the need to explore the depths of our emotions, our fears, and our suffering in order to emerge from those shadows with a greater sense of self and purpose. Finally, the ultimate apotheosis, Psyche's transformation into a goddess, represents the archetype of the divine union of soul and spirit. This final elevation symbolizes the completion of the soul's journey toward wholeness, balance, and union with the divine. As Psyche is transformed, she symbolizes the potential for humanity to transcend its earthly limitations and reconnect with the divine. Her transformation is a celebration of the human potential to evolve spiritually, to embrace our own divinity, and to live in harmony with the forces of love and the universe. In many ways, the archetypes represented in the myth of Psyche and Cupid echo across countless other myths of transformation, love, and self-discovery. Their journey speaks to universal human experiences, the longing for love, the trials we face in relationships, the inner struggles that challenge us to grow, and the ultimate transcendence that love can offer. These archetypes are timeless because they speak to something fundamental within the human experience: our need for love, understanding, and connection to something greater than ourselves. Through Psyche and Cupid, we are reminded that true transformation is always possible, that love can elevate us, and that the journey toward the divine is one of both challenge and reward. The myth of Psyche and Cupid has endured through the ages, not only because of its divine themes of love and transformation, but also because of its deep resonance with the human experience. Across time and cultures, their story continues to captivate and inspire, offering valuable lessons about the nature of love, personal growth, and the pursuit of happiness. This myth, though born in the ancient world, has woven itself into the fabric of modern existence, adapting to new contexts while retaining its core messages. What is it about Psyche and Cupid that makes their myth so enduring? On one level, their tale is a deeply human one, a love story marked by hardship, uncertainty, and ultimately triumph. Like many of the greatest myths, it speaks to the universal desire for connection and the obstacles that stand in the way of finding and maintaining true love. But it is also a story about personal evolution, about the growth of the soul through trial and suffering, and the ultimate reward that comes from embracing love with courage and humility. For Psyche, her journey was one of transformation. She began as a beautiful mortal, admired by all but misunderstood, and envied by the gods. Her trials, particularly the seemingly impossible tasks set by Venus, served as a metaphor for the hardships that often come with love and personal growth. Like Psyche, we all face moments of despair, confusion, and self-doubt as we navigate our way through life and relationships. Yet, it is through these trials that we often learn our most important lessons, emerging stronger and wiser than before. Cupid's role in this myth is no less significant. As the god of love, he represents the divine force that connects all things. But Cupid, like love itself, is not always predictable or easy to understand. He tests those he loves, pushing them to their limits to ensure that they are worthy of his affection. In the case of Psyche, his love was not only a source of joy, but also a catalyst for her transformation. His trials, which seemed harsh at times, were ultimately necessary for Psyche's growth. Cupid's actions mirror the complexity of love, how it can challenge, shape, and even hurt us, but also how it can ultimately heal and redeem. What sets Psyche and Cupid apart from many other mythic figures is their shared journey toward unity. Their love story is not one of immediate happiness or perfect harmony, but one that evolves over time. Their union is the culmination of a long journey, where both characters are tested, transformed, and ultimately united in a bond that transcends mortal limitations. In this sense, their myth speaks to the deeper truth that love is not something to be sought merely for its fleeting pleasures, but for the transformation it can bring. True love, in their story, is not just about affection or physical attraction. It is about growth, mutual respect, and spiritual connection. This understanding of love as a transformative force has deep relevance in the modern world, where relationships are often idealized and romanticized, but rarely shown in their full complexity. Psyche and Cupid's story challenges us to rethink our perceptions of love. It reminds us that true love is not just about passion or idealized moments of happiness. It is about endurance, self-awareness, and the willingness to face challenges for the sake of the bond we share with another. It is a love that requires us to confront our fears, doubts, and imperfections, and it is through this process that we ultimately become the best versions of ourselves. In modern society, the myth of Psyche and Cupid also speaks to the importance of self-love. Before Psyche could unite with Cupid, she had to prove her worth not only to him, but to herself. Her journey was as much about self-discovery as it was about love for another. This is an important lesson, particularly in a world where external validation often takes precedence over internal growth. Psyche's trials and ultimate transformation show us that self-love and self-respect are essential for healthy relationships, and only when we understand our own worth can we truly embrace the love of others. The themes of the myth are timeless because they are not confined to the circumstances of the ancient world. Love, in all its forms, remains as relevant today as it was thousands of years ago. Whether we are navigating romantic relationships, familial bonds, or friendships, the story of Psyche and Cupid serves as a reminder that love, in its most meaningful form, is not about perfection or ease, but about the willingness to grow and evolve together. Their myth tells us that true love is an ongoing process, one that requires patience, understanding, and a deep connection to the soul. Another way in which the myth resonates with modern audiences is through its exploration of the dualities within love. Cupid and Psyche represent opposite yet complementary forces: divinity and mortality, passion and wisdom, desire and self-control. These dualities mirror the contradictions inherent in human nature and in our relationships with others. Love itself is full of contradictions. It can bring both joy and pain, peace and conflict. By embodying these contrasts, Psyche and Cupid show us that love is not a one-dimensional experience, but a complex and multifaceted force that shapes and reshapes us. In addition to these universal themes, the myth of Psyche and Cupid also has practical significance for the modern world. It teaches us about the importance of perseverance in the face of adversity. Just as Psyche faced trial after trial and remained steadfast, so too must we find the strength to continue on our own journeys, even when the path seems uncertain or difficult. Whether in matters of love, career, or personal growth, the myth encourages us to trust in the process of transformation and to believe that our struggles, though painful, are leading us towards something greater. The enduring appeal of Psyche and Cupid's story lies in the fact that it is not just a myth of gods and mortals, but a myth of the soul, a story that speaks to the deepest parts of us all. It reminds us that love is not merely a fleeting emotion, but a force that has the power to change our lives, shape our destinies, and help us realize our fullest potential. Just as Psyche was transformed from a mortal to a goddess through love, we too can experience profound transformation when we allow love, both for others and for ourselves, to guide us on our journey. In the end, the myth of Psyche and Cupid speaks to the timeless, universal truth that love is both a challenge and a reward. It is something that requires patience, sacrifice, and self-awareness, but it is also the force that can elevate us to new heights and connect us to the divine. Their story is a beacon of hope, showing us that through love, true, unconditional love, we can overcome any obstacle, heal our deepest wounds, and emerge more whole, more radiant, and more at peace with ourselves and the world around us. The myth of Psyche and Cupid continues to hold relevance, not only in the arts and literature, but also in contemporary thought and philosophy. As society evolves, the timeless themes of their story, sacrifice, transformation, and the union of opposites, continue to serve as a framework for understanding human relationships, personal growth, and the pursuit of happiness. Their myth has proven adaptable, providing profound insight into the nature of love and the inner journey of self-discovery, themes that remain as important today as they were in the ancient world. In contemporary psychology, the archetypes represented by Psyche and Cupid have found resonance in the concept of self-actualization, the idea that human beings are on a journey of personal growth, seeking to realize their fullest potential. Psyche's journey, from mortal to goddess, mirrors the psychological process of becoming one's true self, transcending limitations and embracing both the light and dark aspects of the human experience. Her transformation symbolizes the realization of one's inner potential and the completion of the individuation process, a term used in Jungian psychology to describe the integration of the conscious and unconscious aspects of the self. Psyche's trials represent the psychological obstacles that must be overcome in order to achieve a sense of wholeness. The sorting of grains, the retrieval of the golden wool, and the descent into the underworld are all metaphors for the challenges faced in the process of self-discovery. In psychological terms, these are the tests of character, the moments of doubt, and the struggles with the darker, hidden parts of the self that must be faced in order to achieve personal growth. The myth of Psyche and Cupid, when viewed through the lens of psychology, offers a roadmap for the healing and transformation of the soul, guiding us to confront and integrate the shadow aspects of our personalities. Cupid, too, plays a crucial role in the psychological journey. As the god of love, he represents the unifying force that draws together the opposing aspects of the self. He symbolizes the power of love to heal and bring balance, not just in relationships with others, but within ourselves. His love for Psyche, while at times distant and challenging, is ultimately a force that leads her toward integration and enlightenment. Cupid's arrows, once seen as tools of romantic affection, can now be understood as symbols of the transformative power of love to guide individuals toward wholeness and self-realization. His role as both a guide and a test of love speaks to the complex nature of human relationships, where love is not always easy, but it is always a force of growth and healing. In the realm of modern spirituality, The myth of Psyche and Cupid continues to offer profound lessons on the nature of love, personal evolution, and the path to divine union. Many contemporary spiritual practices emphasize the importance of embracing the trials of life, seeing them as opportunities for growth and transformation. Psyche's trials, when interpreted in a spiritual context, are seen as necessary stages in the soul's journey toward enlightenment. The underworld, for example, symbolizes the spiritual darkness that one must navigate in order to reach the light of divine understanding. Her descent is a necessary rite of passage, an initiation that prepares the soul to receive the divine gift of love and wisdom. Similarly, Cupid's role in the myth aligns with spiritual teachings on the nature of divine love, unconditional, transformative, and ultimately healing. Cupid's love for Psyche is not one that is based on immediate gratification or ease, but one that requires effort, understanding, and sacrifice. This mirrors the teachings of many spiritual traditions which emphasize that divine love is not merely an emotion or feeling, but a force that calls for commitment, patience, and personal growth. The love that Psyche and Cupid share is the love that transcends ego and desire, guiding both to a higher state of being. In modern relationships, the myth of Psyche and Cupid offers valuable insight into the challenges and rewards of love. The tale is not just about romantic love, but about the deeper connection between two souls. Psyche and Cupid's love is transformative, not because it is perfect, but because it is a love that allows both to grow and evolve. Their journey teaches us that love is not merely about companionship or passion. It is about the deep and often difficult work of facing our own fears, insecurities, and limitations in order to create something greater together. It is a love that requires vulnerability, sacrifice, and the willingness to confront the darker aspects of the self. Psyche's trials serve as a reminder that love is often a challenging and transformative process, and that true connection is not without its tests. In a modern context, their story speaks to the importance of perseverance in relationships, the need for self-reflection, and the growth that comes from facing difficulties together. The myth challenges us to understand love not as a fleeting emotion, but as a force that shapes and reshapes us, encouraging us to become better versions of ourselves as we navigate life's trials. As society grapples with issues of love, identity, and self-worth in an ever-changing world, the myth of Psyche and Cupid provides a timeless reminder of the power of love to heal, transform, and elevate the soul. The challenges they face are not simply obstacles to be overcome. They are the very means by which the soul is refined and strengthened. This insight into the transformative power of love has a profound resonance in contemporary culture, where the pursuit of personal growth and self-actualization remains a central concern. Moreover, Psyche and Cupid's myth underscores the importance of union, not just in a romantic sense, but in a holistic, spiritual one. Their love ultimately leads to a union that transcends the mortal and divine, a perfect balance between the soul and the spirit. This notion of union, of wholeness, is central to both individual and collective growth. Whether through love of self, love of others, or the search for spiritual enlightenment, the myth teaches us that true unity is achieved only through love that transcends separation and difference. Thus, the myth of Psyche and Cupid continues to resonate in contemporary thought because it speaks to universal human experiences and desires. Love, transformation, self-discovery and spiritual growth are as relevant today as they were in the ancient world, and their story remains a beacon of hope and guidance for those on the journey toward deeper connection and fulfillment. The myth of Psyche and Cupid is a powerful and enduring tale that transcends its ancient roots, offering timeless wisdom about love, personal growth, and transformation. It is a story that continues to speak to us, reminding us that the journey of love is not just about fleeting moments of passion, but about deeper connection, sacrifice, and spiritual evolution. Through their trials, their reunion, and their ultimate transformation, Psyche and Cupid's myth explores the profound ways in which love can shape us, heal us, and lead us to greater understanding of ourselves and the world around us. Their journey is not one of easy answers or simple resolutions. Instead, it is a path of growth, of moments of doubt and despair, but also of ultimate fulfillment and transcendence. In this way, their myth mirrors the complexity of love itself. Love is not a singular experience. It is a multifaceted force that can bring both joy and pain, light and shadow. It is through facing these contrasts that we are ultimately shaped by love and allowed to evolve into our truest selves. Psyche's trials, which seem insurmountable at first, represent the obstacles that we all face in our pursuit of love, both love for others and love for ourselves. The myth reminds us that growth often comes through struggle. It is through the challenges of life, through the heartache and the moments of doubt, that we find the strength to rise again and continue our journey. Psyche's perseverance in the face of adversity teaches us the value of resilience, of trusting in love's transformative power, even when the path is unclear and the future uncertain. Cupid, too, embodies a crucial lesson about love. As the god of love, his role is not just to give affection, but to test, guide, and challenge the one he loves. His love is not simply a passive force of sweetness and light, but a dynamic, challenging force that pushes Psyche to confront her own weaknesses and limitations. This is a reminder that love, at its deepest and most fulfilling, requires us to grow, to face our fears, and to become better versions of ourselves. True love, in the myth of Psyche and Cupid, is not simply about being loved. It is about being transformed by that love. Their story also offers us a powerful reflection on the nature of union. Psyche and Cupid's ultimate reunion represents the merging of two souls, one divine and one mortal, into a harmonious whole. Their love is a symbol of the potential for unity, not just between lovers, but between all opposites, the conscious and unconscious, the light and the dark, the human and the divine. It is a reminder that true love, in its highest form, leads to wholeness and integration. The myth suggests that when love is allowed to work its transformative magic, it can bridge the gaps between what seems separate, creating a harmonious union that transcends the individual and embraces the collective. Furthermore, the ascension of Psyche into the heavens, her transformation into a goddess, symbolizes the potential for all of us to achieve spiritual enlightenment through love. Her journey is not just one of personal growth, but one that reflects the universal journey of the soul toward divine connection. Psyche's ascent represents the idea that love has the power to elevate us, to lead us beyond the limitations of the earthly realm and towards something higher, more meaningful, and more eternal. It is through love that we can reach our highest potential, not just as individuals, but as part of a larger, interconnected universe. In a world that often emphasizes individual success and achievement, the myth of Psyche and Cupid reminds us that love is not just a personal pursuit, but a cosmic force that shapes the very fabric of existence. Their love is not bound by time or space. It is eternal, a reminder that love, in its purest form, transcends even the gods themselves. The message of their story is simple, yet profound. Love is the most powerful force in the universe, capable of overcoming all obstacles and bringing about transformation and transcendence. The enduring legacy of Psyche and Cupid's myth is not just in its symbolism or the lessons it teaches, but in the universal truths it reveals about the nature of love. It teaches us that love is both a gift and a challenge, a force that can heal and hurt, elevate and humble. It is through love that we grow, that we find meaning, and that we are able to connect to the deepest parts of ourselves and each other. Their myth, with its themes of transformation, sacrifice, and divine union, reminds us that love is not merely something we experience, but something we become. As we reflect on the journey of Psyche and Cupid, we are reminded that their story is not just a myth of the gods, but a myth of the human soul. It is a story that transcends time, culture, and circumstance, offering timeless wisdom for those who are willing to embark on the journey of love. And just as Psyche and Cupid found their union in the divine, so too can we find the sacred within ourselves and our relationships, transforming our lives and the world around us through the power of love. As we reach the end of our journey through the timeless myth of Psyche and Cupid, we find ourselves not just reflecting on a story of gods and mortals, but on a tale of transformation, love, and spiritual evolution. Their love, tested and true, serves as a reminder that the path to growth, understanding, and connection is not always smooth, but it is always worth walking. Psyche's journey from trials to triumph shows us that even in our deepest struggles, love has the power to guide us to our truest selves. Thank you for joining me in exploring this beautiful myth. If you found peace, insight, or inspiration in the story of Psyche and Cupid, please like, subscribe, and share your thoughts. Let me know where you're listening from. I'd love to hear how this ancient tale of love and transformation resonates with you. May love, in all its forms, continue to guide and elevate you, just as it did for Psyche and Cupid. As you drift off to sleep, let the lessons of this story linger in your heart. Love is both the challenge and the reward, the force that shapes us and brings us closer to the divine. Sleep well, and may your own journey of love and growth continue in its beautiful, transformative way.